hold off for the show, but it says that the amount of great teams in the NFL this year you can probably count on one hand.
Maybe 5, maybe 6.
Maybe, yeah.
Maybe. That means the other 8 teams in the playoffs are garbage.
Right, and you know what? I've got bad vibes in my head because I remember what happened in the wild card round last year. Every single game was a blowout, but one. The wild card round was so ugly last year. I'm afraid the same thing's going to happen again this year, Jim.
I wrote that to Andy yesterday. I
Yeah.
think we might have some blowouts in the early rounds because these teams
Merry day after Christmas, guys. But no, Jim, you're absolutely right. In fact, it's kind of like the first round of the college football playoffs.
Yep, that too.
Hi, Tony.
Hey, fellas, how are y'all? Happy holidays to everybody.
By the way, Greg, I'm expecting a call. Don't know if it'll come during the show, but if it comes, I have to take it. So if I sort of like disappear for a little bit, I'll let you know. Maybe I'll just text you a message.
Yeah, you can hit me in the private chat. Let me know. Otherwise, if you're gone, I'll know why. No problem.
I wonder how sad Netflix is about those 2 games they got yesterday.
I was thrilled that they got those kind of games. You know, it's Christmas Day. Roger Goodell, can't you give us a damn break and give us 2 games for free on Christmas?
3 games in 11 days. That'll do that.
Oh yeah, no, that's for the teams involved. That's the NFL.
I mean, that's what the quality of
is
product,
run by idiots who know only one thing: how much money can we get from how many suckers? They don't care about. We talk about it all the time. They care about safety. No, they don't.
No, they don't.
You wouldn't have 17 games if they cared about safety. You wouldn't have 3 games in 11 days if they cared about safety.
You know, the results of the last 2 weeks, to me, they've revealed a big-time drop-off in the AFC specifically in regards to depth, in regards to their quality teams. You can basically only name 3 very good teams in the AFC: Kansas City, Buffalo, Baltimore. Yep. I don't see any other team that can, let alone go far in the playoffs.
Well, I mean, look, I think that Pittsburgh, obviously Russell Wilson is taking a step backwards, and they really weren't equipped for this 3-11. And Houston obviously wasn't. And then Stroud is, gone down the drain the last 2 months. So
Chargers and Broncos possibly have a chance to win a game and advance, but I can't see them going more beyond the divisional round.
Right.
And basically, you have 14 teams. 6 of them are decent quality potential champions, and 8 of them are a bunch of donkeys.
I mean, NFC, for example, you could see Detroit. You could see Philadelphia. I think you could make a case for Green Bay and or Minnesota, the 4 right there. Mm-hmm. Don't know about Washington, but, with an experienced head coach and a rookie quarterback who is likely going to win Rookie of the Year and who has been playing better lately after sort of a midseason slump, they could do some damage. I think it's going to be, you'd almost have to think whoever comes out of the NFC might be a good bet to win the Super Bowl. Number one, they'd be going up against whoever it is. Let's say it's either Kansas City or one of Kansas City, Baltimore, or Buffalo. All of those teams have played a lot of postseason games in recent years, and that could take a toll after this long season, especially those teams who don't get the bye in the wild card round. And you take a look at some of these teams in the NFC. Green Bay has been there 1 year. Detroit has been there 1 year. Minnesota was there 2 years ago in the playoffs. So you can make a case. Now, Philadelphia, of course, has been there for 3 or 4 years, and they were a Super Bowl, but that was about 5 years ago. So you could have a fresher team coming out of the NFC who will have had a more difficult path to get to the Super Bowl than the teams in the AFC, aside from probably the AFC title game.
The only problem is if Kansas City gets there, you're dealing with 2 coaches that are incredible, in Spagnuolo and Reed.
Yeah.
And you have to overcome them. And not too many people have had success with that lately.
I'm looking at what the Chiefs have done, and you almost say, they play. I didn't write it in my newsletter because I thought of it, but I didn't write the game up. The Kansas City Chiefs this year are the Minnesota Vikings of 2022. Okay, I think Minnesota was 11-0 in one-score games, and I think that's what Kansas City is this year in one-score games. The difference is Kansas City is an experienced team, and I wouldn't be surprised if part of their game plan all season is just win games. We don't need to win blowouts. Let's just conserve our energy for the time when it counts. And we've seen it the last 3 weeks. After not covering, 8 in a row? They covered in a 14-point win over Cleveland. They won that on the short rest Saturday game. They covered, winning by 8 at Houston. And, of course, they were the better team from start to finish yesterday against Pittsburgh. So maybe Kansas City was saving its strength up for the kind of run we're seeing them on right now.
And along those lines, when they get ahead, you don't see them keep their foot on the gas to try. They just run out the game, and
exactly,
they don't. I mean, they're not sitting there for somebody to catch up. Although sometimes they have done that, but
yeah,
they're just better. I mean,
they guys, there's only 4 teams in the NFL this year that have not cracked the 30-point mark on offense. They've not scored 30 or more points. For the first 3 teams, their records are kind of obvious. The New York Giants, 2-13, the Raiders, 3-12, and the Patriots, 3-12. The 4th team to have not scored 30 or more points this year is the 15-1 Kansas City Chiefs.
Yep. They've done enough to win.
Yeah.
Well, we have 2 games in the books for week. What are we at now? Week 17. Yep. 2 games in the books. And like you guys said, there were blowouts. So not very entertaining, but the games did tell us something pretty convincingly. Kind of remind me, I don't remember when it was last year. It might have been just before the playoffs when people started making predictions and everybody kind of gave up on the Chiefs and they went on the road and they made the run and it just didn't feel right. And I just thought they were a really good bet based on that. And even though they're not the overwhelming favorite right now, they're still, if you take a look at some of the sports books, they're still pretty even as far as the favorite to win the Super Bowl. Detroit's still up there, which kind of surprises me.
Right now?
They're about 4-1, just like the Lions, at least on my sports book.
Where are the Eagles?
Right around there, right about 5-1. Yeah. So yeah, they're all pretty. Matter of fact, if I just go based on, say, DraftKings, they have the Chiefs as a little bit of a favorite now over the Lions. Eagles, they have it 6-1. Chiefs, they have a little less than 4-1. Lions 4-1, Bills 6-1, and the Ravens 6-1.
I have 2 questions. First of all, does anybody find it strange that Detroit is favored tonight, or not tonight, but this week at Minnesota? And secondly,
Green Bay, you mean?
Do we know anything about Jalen Hurts and his concussion issues?
Hurts obviously didn't practice yesterday. Not a lot of them did. I don't think he plays this weekend. I think you kind of roll the dice that they can beat the Cowboys with Pickett and Saquon.
The Friday practice report for Philadelphia will dictate whether or not Tony's correct on Hurts not playing or not. The Friday practice report is the key one of the whole week in regards to a concussion.
Well, Dallas has been playing extremely well.
I have to think Philadelphia is pretty much assuming they're going to be the number 2 seed. So why take a risk? Why not rest the players? Okay. But although if Hurts is capable of playing, maybe you give him a bit of a rest. Maybe you give him a half or something, because you figure next week in week 18 that the Eagles probably won't play any significant starters because they have to play the following week in the wild card game. And I don't know that you want Hurts to go into that wild card game having not seen action for what would have been 3 weeks.
Who would they likely be playing in that scenario, Andy?
They would be playing the number 7 seed. Assuming the Eagles are that would be playing right now. It would be Minnesota. It would be Washington, I believe.
Well, the 6th seed right now is Green Bay. Washington's the 7, but again, you're talking about Green Bay is just a game ahead of Washington.
No, I'm sorry. That Philly would be the number 2 seed. Would be playing the number 7 seed, so that would be Washington, not the number 6 seed. That would be the number 3 seed.
Which is the team that just beat them.
Yes.
Yeah, but just beat them without Jalen Hurts. I mean, they were
Right.
They had
It wasn't Jalen Hurts who cost them that game. They put up 30 points. It was the defense who couldn't hold them to a field goal except at the very end. They gave up 5 touchdowns on a defense that had been playing lights out for the last 2 months.
I had to talk about one of my best friends off the ledge because he's a huge Eagles fan, and obviously they're haunted by what happened last year.
And they're well trained on sitting on the ledge.
Right.
And I mean, look, not to mention, I think everybody went into this season expecting that if the first month didn't go right, that there'd be a complete upheaval with the coaching staff, and that obviously didn't happen. So, you go. That's why I think this Cowboys game is so large. Obviously, that's your hated rival. It's always game on when they're in town. They come off the win against the Bucs, but that win against the Bucs took a lot out of them, I think. So I think if Pickett plays well, I mean, I don't think they need Hurts to beat them. I just wrote that I love the Saquon over 108 rushing yards was the first number that's out prop wise. I just think you ride Saquon, you ride that offensive line against a defense that's still.
Barkley was injured a couple of weeks ago, so I might want to be a little bit careful with him. I mean, you'd like to get the record, but
you watched the Washington game, right? He's fine.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no need to put kid gloves on Barkley. You try to win games, and you do. I think psychologically, you do try to beat the brakes off of Dallas and eliminate all doubts over because if that's things you don't want those lingering doubts in the back of your mind after a really grueling loss to Washington.
I think Jim was absolutely right, though. I think that, and I guess, Jim, you're thinking of, that's a lot of points to be taking with the Cowboys when we don't know what we're going to get out of Philadelphia. But I think the key to the bet is what's the mindset of the Dallas Cowboys? They've certainly shown the last few weeks that they're still playing. They have a chance by winning here and winning next week. They have a chance to finish 9-8. Now, I don't know exactly what kind of goal that might be, but, they could easily be, 4 or 5 wins in a row because they lost that fluky game to Cincinnati on that Monday night. So, everyone was putting all the heat on them. And McCarthy's probably going to get a contract extension now.
They're the hottest team in football right now when you consider what they've done the last 6 weeks. I mean, they're depleted. They're down to, but their backup quarterback is pretty damn good. He's got a 9-4 record as a backup quarterback for Dallas the last few years that he's played. And that's a hell of a record for a backup.
Jim, your second question was what's going on with the Minnesota Green Bay line.
Yes.
And that is a weird thing now that the Green Bay is favored on the road.
Yes, exactly.
On short rest, playing off a Monday game. In our database, road teams off a home shutout win do not do very well, particularly against division opponents. I know Green Bay's got in-season revenge. Didn't Minnesota win like 31-29 earlier this year? I know they got the revenge, but it is still weird that the road team is favored in that big division game.
I don't get it. I just don't get it. I mean, and what is Green Bay playing for? I mean, Minnesota has every reason to play hard in this game because if the Monday night game goes to the Niners, they could jump up into the number 1 seed.
Yeah.
They are playing at home. It is indoors. I don't get the line at all. I mean, I must be missing something.
I think the game on Monday night for Detroit is meaningless if Minnesota wins on Sunday. So if there's a line that should move, it should be that game because Detroit has the tiebreaker edge over Minnesota. So if Minnesota wins out, they would be 14 and they could be 14-2 or 15-2. And 15-3, and the Lions would be 15-3 if they beat Minnesota. If Minnesota and Detroit end up tied, Detroit has the tiebreaker edge because one of their losses was to an AFC team, and so I think by virtue of the conference record,
suppose Detroit loses this week and next week, then what happens?
Minnesota
wins the division.
Yeah, but you have to keep in mind though that Detroit's still trying to get the number 1 seed. So that's a big. So even if Minnesota loses, they still have to win to keep pace.
I think whoever wins the division is going to be the number 1 seed, unless they both lose out.
No, they're only a game ahead of Philly.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. That if Philly wins,
I'm just talking about Detroit though.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if Detroit loses, no matter what happens to Minnesota, Detroit has to win on Monday night to try to stay ahead of Philly.
That's correct.
So it's not going to meet. So that game will.
Except
mean
I think Detroit No, Detroit would not have an advantage because Detroit lost to Buffalo, but Philadelphia lost to Pittsburgh, so they each have at least one. Detroit has only one AFC loss. I think Philadelphia does as well, because I think Philadelphia also lost to Tampa Bay and Atlanta in back-to-back weeks early in September.
Yeah. So either way, the playoffs are going to be here real soon, real fast. If you're a fan of teams that are not going to the postseason, like yours truly, I'm trying my best to tell Jet fans, hey, this is going to be a great time of year because look up. You're actually going to have changes. And there's a lot of teams that are like that. They're going to have coaches. We're hearing news about Pete Carroll now sticking his neck in the Chicago Bears situation, which is interesting.
Will definitely be an improvement over what they've got going on there.
Oh, just imagine Pete Carroll comes, if that's true, and Pete Carroll says, I'm interested. I mean, if you're the Chicago Bears, you're like, all right, well, where do we sign? I mean, why would you even think about that?
Brandon Staley might not actually be a downgrade.
Good line. I love it.
So we've got games coming up also tonight that doesn't have as much of an impact we thought it was last week because Seattle's now dropped 2 straight, but they have to win to keep pace. They need the Rams to lose, though. If the Rams do not lose to Arizona, it's over. And the Rams
are going to annihilate Arizona. No,
that was an embarrassing. It was an embarrassing loss they had. Yeah, and they lost 41-10. I think it was in week 2 in Arizona. That's a humiliating loss. And you have to wonder Arizona's.
Williams is grinding it out so well. McVay is using them great. They got the wide receivers. They got a Super Bowl champion in Stafford, and without Connor, you lose the entire balance in their running game because now it's all Murray because they've lost their 2 backs.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, it is funny how things change so dramatically.
Greg, do you have the Super Bowl odds on the Rams? Because that's not a ridiculous. If they win out, that's not a ridiculous price at all, considering the experience they have.
It's a good line. I mean, if you like the Rams, take it. 30 is a good number.
What is the price?
30.
Oh,
yeah.
I mean, other big prices that might interest people. I mean, the Chargers are 50, the Steelers are 50.
I said before that I had to leave, that I might have to leave to receive a phone call. I might have to leave to make a phone call.
Get some action.
30-1, yeah.
And the Bengals, unfortunately, did not get the result yesterday they were hoping for. So now it looks pretty bad for Cincinnati. Even if they beat Denver, Denver will take on a Kansas City team the last week of the season. Now, the only possibility that might work out for Denver, for Cincinnati, if they win this week, is that Carson Wentz will start, and Carson Wentz is going to try to win the football game. It doesn't mean he's going to have a great supporting cast, but you can't sit everybody. There will be starters out there for the Chiefs.
Let me ask a question about
it's not like going from the Mahomes to a DTR. Yeah. This is actually a quarterback that's going to want to go out there and play well.
Let me ask a question. Did Mahomes sit out week 18 last year because they had already locked up the number 1 seed? Oh, I'm sorry. Baltimore had the number 1 seed, so that would not have been.
Yeah, and that's exactly what Baltimore did. Baltimore rested everybody against Pittsburgh.
This year, the number 1 gets a bye week, correct?
Yeah, just the number 1.
So if you were to sit your starters in the final game, the regular season game, and then to get the bye, they'd be off for 2 weeks.
Yes.
The Chiefs aren't going to play again until, I believe, January 16th, 17th, 18th, something like that.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a substantial thing. But I don't think that matters at all.
Yeah,
I think that's the same thing I said about Hurts playing at least a half this week, because they're going to have to play on Wild Card weekend, so they would rest everybody in week 18 and not have to come back with Hurts not playing for basically 3 weeks, because he will have played in weeks 16 and then week 17. 1 week to week 17, 1 week to week 18, and then 1 week to week 19, which is the first round of the wild card round. So that's why I think Hurts might play against a similar situation, perhaps with Mahomes, only 1 week later.
I think Mahomes did not play the last time the Chiefs were the number 1 seed and had that wrapped up, and I don't think Mahomes obviously plays this next week. So they'll be fine with the break. I mean, look, I'll bite on your Hurts needs the reps next week if we can go, but not Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs.
No.
Let me. We're going to be doing a few games. We're going to break down in just a couple of, actually, probably a couple of minutes. In the meantime, I just want to show everybody, in case you haven't, in case you don't know how to do this, if you're used to watching our shows over on Playbook Experts YouTube channel and haven't figured out yet how to get over to our new channel, Proline TV. So if you're on the Playbook Experts channel, you can just take a look at last week's show right here. This is the NFL show that we did, and let's say you're checking that show out, you're watching it, and so what you do is you come right over here, and all you have to do is read this. It says to watch the full-length video, et cetera, et cetera. Check out our new Proline TV channel here, which is right here. So all you have to do is click that, and that's it. And now you're on Proline TV. As you can see here, that's the Proline TV logo. And then you just move on over to where you would subscribe. Obviously, I've already subscribed, so you don't have to do that. But if you click that, you're going right to the Proline TV homepage. And again, you would just hit the subscribe button to subscribe to Proline TV. And by the way, if you're a horse racing fan, we had a really good show on the 24th because it's opening day at Santa Anita today. So we had a lot. Look at that, nice amount of views for the horse racing show.
Wow.
So who says people don't pay attention to horse racing anymore?
Wow. Well, yeah, that surely changes that thinking.
Yeah. So now again, it's an unusual show having to do it on a Tuesday for a Thursday card, and maybe it helped to have Christmas. You know, everybody's at home. You know, especially the older men, which is the horse racing audience, and you know they got their bellies are all full and they're checking out what's going on online. You know, they're watching the NFL games and they're blowouts and they're trying to figure out what else to do. Or they could check out the horse racing show, and I'm sure that's probably what some of them did. And you can check out all the other shows here. We have college football. All these specialty programs are specialty programs such as this. The Playbook ATS podcast. There's the horse racing. We have NASCAR. We have hockey. There's our shorts. And there's the classics. How about that? 8 years ago, Jim Feist, Dave Koken. You can check out some classic Proline TV here on Proline TV.
Wow.
So
that goes back a few. That's wow.
I tell you what, let's before we dive into it, guys, I'm going to start with Victor, because you've been off for a little bit, Victor. So what? Oh, and I'll give you an extra few weeks since we haven't spoken to you for a few weeks. Give me something that you enjoyed the most in sports since the last time we all talked to you. Just give me something that you look back and you go, man, that was really awesome. Doesn't have to be a pick. Could just be a game, something that you just really liked that made you love sports. What was it?
Well, you look at in the last 3 or 4 weeks in pro football, it seems like we have had a game of the year where the next or subsequent week, there's even a more exciting game of the year type experience. And this is just like over the last 3 or 4 weeks of play. And while I may not have had any action or any juice in those games, they've just been phenomenal games to watch. And we go back to the Rams-Bills game, 44-42 indoors. What was that, week 14? Very exciting game. We didn't think we could get any higher scoring than that, particularly after that Pittsburgh-Cincinnati game the week before that. But we did when Detroit hosted Buffalo in week 15, 48-42 final score. If you like shootouts, there you had it. But then again, last week there was again another game that I thought was the most enjoyable game, even though I had no action whatsoever, was this game that you guys were just talking about, this Philadelphia-Washington game that was kind of a couple of games in one. Philadelphia dominated the first 3 quarters of that game. I think they were winning something like 27-14 after 3 quarters. Washington had that amazing comeback in the fourth quarter. They outscored Philadelphia 22-6 in the game. Just an incredible comeback. One of multiple Washington fourth quarter comebacks this year that have made things very, very exciting. And obviously, the two main reasons, you guys touched on it, that they were able to come back was the Jalen Hurts injury, the fact that Kenny Pickett is not an effective NFL quarterback. Sorry, Kenny. Sorry, University of Pitt. But the fact that they held Saquon Barkley to only 25 yards in the second half of that game last week, I think that was the key to the Washington win. He had 125 in the first half, but only 25 rushing yards in the second half. So for me, it's obviously the fact that on a week-by-week basis, we're getting very, very exciting games that seem to eclipse the game from the week before.
Well, I hope we get one of those again this weekend, because we certainly didn't get that yesterday. But maybe some of the games that we're going to talk about will fit that criteria. Was there anything, before I move on to ask you guys the same questions, was there anything, though, that disappointed you at all over the last few weeks in sports?
For me, the less said, the better. I'm off my worst weekend in combined college and NFL of the entire season. So that's all I'll say about that, and we can move on to the next guy.
Okay, let's do that. Jim, give us your most favorite and least favorite over the last week. What did you? Let's start with your favorite. What did you really enjoy? What is it about sports that you look back at the last week? Something specific that you said, yeah, I really. Now I know why I love sports.
The only thing I enjoy about it is cashing tickets. I mean,
okay.
I'm not emotionally involved with any of this. It's when I'm cashing tickets and my opinion is correct, and not so much when I cash tickets and I'm lucky to win, but when I'm actually right in my analysis, which has been my totals. I think I'm taking lessons from Victor because I've been doing good with totals. I mean, I had Steelers yesterday, which I'm embarrassed about. Fortunately, I didn't bother with the other game, but I did get the under in the Steeler game, and so that worked out. So I was 1-1 there. But the totals have been really good. The sides, I'm disappointed in the quality of the NFL because I'll just go on about this. We're going into a 14-team playoff situation in a couple weeks. And quite frankly, and we've discussed it, so I'm really kind of repeating what everybody's kind of said. There's only 5 or 6 teams that are quality that you would expect to even show up and do anything dramatically well, unless there's injuries, of course. And there's always kind of fluky stuff that happens or a bad ref's call or something. But on paper, there's only about 6 teams that are any good, and the other 8 teams are dog meat. And you just don't know when you have 2 teams yesterday. Now, granted, then Tony brought this up, the 11-day thing and 3 games and all that. That can have an effect, of course. But these are professionals, and you would expect a little bit better. I mean, 2 points from the Texans and 10 points from Steelers. And they used to say, let Russ cook. Well, I'm going to switch it around. Let's cook Rush because, I mean, he is done. Please get him off the table.
He's done. Wow, that was fast.
Get these old guys out of the game. It's a young man's sport. When you start getting 36, 38, 40 years old, they just don't perform. I mean, that's still a young man, but not for football. It's not a football age, unless you're Tom Brady. And
well, don't you think the thing that really was the disappointing factor was the fact it was the Steelers' defense, though? Just like we talked about the Eagles' defense, the Steelers are supposed to have a really good defense, and I know that it's the Chiefs, but still, there was
just the Chiefs are the Super Bowl champs.
I know. I said I know it's the Chiefs, so you get that, but still, if you're going to be a championship defense, it's not like other teams defenses haven't been able to, put pressure on Patrick, and
sometimes it's balanced. I mean, if you can't do anything on offense, your defense is always on the field. I mean, Victor mentioned last week with Washington against Philly. Well, Hurts out of the lineup in the second half. Philadelphia couldn't run the ball.
Right, one-dimensional.
And now, was that because Hurts wasn't there to give the run-pass option more credibility? That could be. But Washington holding down this vaunted Philadelphia running game, and usually in the second half, Philadelphia wears you out. with their offensive line and Barkley, and I mean they only had like 25 yards rushing. I mean, in the second half, I mean that's where Washington came back and won the game. Now we can talk about Daniels all you want because obviously he's talented, but how the hell did they shut down Philadelphia's running game?
All right, Tony, what? I better be able to predict what you're going to be the most disappointed with, but tell me what you are really, really happy about. What was really cool the past week or two about sports?
Well, I don't know that you'd be able to predict, but if you can, great.
What I should be able to, because if you give me a different answer, I'm going to be a little bit surprised and disappointed.
All right. Well, if I disappoint you, I want to know what you thought, and then I'll respond to that. But no, I mean, look, as somebody that admits that the NBA product is
there you go
really struggling right now, I think yesterday was hopefully a bit of a revival. Victor Wembanyama is amazing. Like you got a 7'4" guy shooting 3-pointers and going for 44 at the Garden, his first Christmas Day appearance there. And that was a great game. And obviously we got the throwback LeBron and Steph thing last night. So that was fun to see for me. So hopefully better things from here from the NBA. What was most disappointing? I had a great run going on packages at Playbook Sports and the other sites where I'm at, NFL wise, and it ended yesterday with losing package. 2 out of 3. I was on the Steelers too, so I thought that the Chiefs would their depth issues in 3 of 11 would catch up to them, and obviously was very wrong there. Was on the Ravens. That was my best bet, but I thought the Texans would give them a fight, so I was on the over. So always disappointing to lose, especially on Christmas. And then I'm also disappointed with college football and the general tone that most people have taken with the CFP. But
the tone? You mean what? How they?
How everybody is doing this elitist thing about these teams don't belong in the playoffs when. Even when the field is down to 4, most college football playoff games have been blowouts over the last decade. I mean, I think we're just being very short-sighted and sour grapes in SEC Nation.
No, I feel the same way. It's sort of like Ole Miss. I mean, Kiffin he's just a pain in the ass.
Yeah, I love Kiffin, but shut up.
I know.
You lost to Florida. Like, come on! If you win at Florida, you don't care about this conversation, and you're making fun of your fellow SEC brethren. Which did
they also lose to Kentucky?
Yes.
Yeah.
And at least Florida
5-win team, maybe
4-win team.
Yeah,
and at least Florida made a bowl. Yeah. I mean, did you see the amount of money? Speaking of college football, what you could say again is probably disappointing in a way, and that is the NIL. Duke has this really good season, and look, this is Duke. So the last time Duke had a really good quarterback, I don't know. So
it's Riley Leonard.
Okay, and
Daniel Jones,
and what happens to Leonard?
Daniel Jones?
Yeah.
So the money that Mensa got, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean,
is that good? I think that's great for the sport.
It's good for him. But the thing is that I don't mind that he's like a free agent gets paid. What I didn't like is that you had a good quarterback. That's not the reason. I mean, he was fine. I mean, he's not Mensa. I get that.
I think he was on his way out anyway. Something internal must have happened there.
Well, yeah, he probably heard that they were looking for Mensa and wanted to give him $2 million, and he wasn't getting it. But that's the only thing. It's like, do you really have to? I mean, look, we've talked.
Was it maybe the coaching change at Duke after last year with Elko?
No, this kid was here this past year.
No.
Oh, okay.
So that's just a little bit. That's the only thing is that it's almost like, come on, do you really have to make a change like that? Those are the changes I think that get carried away. Because now you're seeing like guys just go everywhere to get a little bit more money, and he goes to this. It's too much sometimes. But anyway, hey, Duke looks like actually they're going to be in good shape though. Manny Diaz has turned himself into a heck of a coach and recruiter. So that's
I'm
great.
all for the improvement of the ACC, so we don't see Clemson every year. I mean, Miami's going to step. Obviously, its NIL game is probably tops in the conference. I think Louisville's going to spend. Now you got Duke and Carolina are set to be more than basketball schools. So I mean, good for the ACC. I think it's
And
good.
Clemson actually made a move. They actually
Clemson
signed
is
someone.
actually going to rely on the transfer portal some. Thank you, Dabo, for catching up to the 21st century.
Yes,
Guys, to add something to Tony's comment, it's never been more difficult to handicap college football bowl games than right here and right now.
Terrible.
It used to be tough.
Yeah, just ask those people who wanted.
It's tough times 10. You got to keep a list of opt-outs, people who are not playing because they're declaring for the NFL draft, and that better be updated. You got to keep a list of the transfer portal and the mess that has resulted in bowl game lines with all these players transferring schools as well. So if you ask me, college football bowl handicapping has never been more difficult.
Just ask the people who wanted to play Marshall plus the 10.5 against Army.
Yep.
And then everybody leaves Marshall after the coach bolts for what? What did he go to? Did he go to Southern Miss?
Or the fact that Syracuse is now laying 16 or 17 points in that game against Washington State. Are you kidding me?
I think the NCAA, for the integrity of the sport, forget the gambling aspect, although that's obviously important, and they make money from gambling now too, the NCAA. But the point is, for the integrity of the sport, there should be no portal transfers until after the championship game. End of story.
I like it.
Yeah, well, let's see if they do it. Andy, give me a something that really inspired you about sports over the last week.
Well, actually, I'm going to stick a little bit with. I'm just going to briefly mention what Tony said about the NBA. I enjoyed that Disney animation on ESPN2, which was literally seconds after what was happening in the live Spur Knicks game with the real players. The animation was like literally 10, 15 seconds later, animating the exact plays that were occurring in that first game. I thought that was kind of neat. I think the Simpsons had something like that a few weeks ago on Monday Night Football with the Cowboys and Bengals. But what I liked was last week in the NFL, and I think Victor talked about it somewhat, and that is the number of close games that we saw. I believe 9 of the 16 games last week were one-score games, beginning with the Chargers' 7-point win over the Broncos. We had the Chiefs winning by 8 over the Texans on the Saturday game. We had the Colts 8 over Tennessee. We had the overtime game between Arizona and Carolina. We had that Washington 3-point game with the great comeback. We had the Minnesota coming from behind after leading most of the game and falling behind at Seattle. That turned out to be a 3-point game. Buffalo and New England turned out to be a 3-point game, with Buffalo getting a late field goal after I think they were down 14-0 in that game early. You had the Jacksonville game with the Raiders, a 5-point game. And you had the Monday night game with Dallas playing as well as we've seen them play in quite a while, hurting Tampa Bay's hopes considerably with the 2-point win. So I thought that was just really great for the competitiveness of most of those games, more than half the schedule, one-score games. And I'm going to stick with that same subject for what I found the most disappointing, and those were, of course, the 2 games I lost on. And that was the Carolina Panthers' great win over the what seemed to be the careless, maybe, Arizona Cardinals, who were playing for a playoff spot with a win, and they were heavily favored. Not heavily, but they were touchdown favorites in that game. And then with the Washington game as well. And I don't know what would have happened had Hurts not been injured. Yeah. Maybe they would have been able to run the ball more and lessen the possessions and give Washington fewer opportunities to mount the comeback. But as I said earlier, it was a defense of Philadelphia that really let them down at the end of the game. And, you can't argue with a Philadelphia team that, they finally get ahead late again and get up, 30-28 and then 33-28. So they were covering the 4.5, and they give up that pass, those passing plays at the end of the game. So that was disappointing as well. So I'd say that pretty much was last week. And the thing, I'll just elaborate a little bit. It was nice to see a number of these teams that had no reason to actually try. Dallas eliminated from the playoffs. We saw the Carolina Panthers eliminated. They played well for several weeks. You could even make a case that some of the other teams played. The Jets played well, even though they lost, but they, had an opportunity there. And that's like the second ugly game they had, where they scored 9 points in a loss. I think they lost 10-9 to Denver earlier in pretty bad conditions. So I was happy to see teams not emulate teams like the New York Giants and just not show up. I like to see these teams playing, because really, when it comes down to it, we've had a lot of top 5, top 1, top 2 draft choices over the years that have been busts. So yeah, you'd like to get the number 1 draft choice, but that's no assurances it's going to work out. I'd rather see these teams play. And again, players don't tank. maybe formations and personnel matchups where guys who are put on the field and haven't had a lot of playing time together, so they don't know each other's timings and moves that they're going to make, especially on defense. That's what loses games, not the players. Players are trying hard, A, to avoid injury, because if you're not playing hard, you have a much better chance of getting injured, and B, they all have contract incentives that, a lot of them have team incentives, but a lot of them also have, in addition to team incentives, individual incentives. So I'm glad to see that more and more players are trying, and and I think if you ask most players, if not all players don't tank.
Well, one of those teams did win, and that was Las Vegas. And it's really funny listening to the Raider fan base, how much they can't stand Antonio Pierce. First, they can't stand him because he can't win, and now they can't stand him because they won. So they're like, you just ruined our chances for our number one pick by beating the Jacksonville Jaguars in a meaningless game.
How about getting angry at the general manager who couldn't put together an offensive line, which has been a weakness, and the Raiders are by far the number 32 rushing team in the league. And if you are that bad at rushing, I think it's like 75 or 80 yards per game, you're not going to win many football games if you can't run the football.
Well, hey, the general manager was so good at his previous job that he was picked up real quickly to become a manager with the Raiders, which I just don't understand. I don't understand how Telesco was looked at as some sort of like winning GM. And the Raiders just couldn't wait to pick him up. But hey, you know what? They're going to get always angry at the head coach. Pierce is in over his head. So Raiders will have a new head coach and more than likely a new quarterback next year. By the way, as we go to Washington, speaking of that Washington-Philly game, keep in mind, Pickett threw the pass, should have been caught. Devonta Smith drops the ball. Yep. If he doesn't drop the ball, that game is over.
Yeah.
So you got to be better than that, and Devonta Smith was not. All right, so speaking of Washington, this is one of the games of the week, and Washington is still about a 4.5 point favorite against Atlanta. Atlanta's rookie quarterback in start number 2, first start on the road now.
Yep.
So now he's got to go on the road, and this is going to be on Sunday Night Football. So second career game on the road in front of a national TV audience with everything on the line for his team. So we're going to find out a lot about this young quarterback. For Washington, they have to rebound after the exciting win over the Philadelphia Eagles. But I guess the reason that you would expect they will rebound is because they haven't clinched the playoff spot yet. So this is still a very important game for both teams, which is why I believe it is the most important game of the week out of all the other games. Whether it turns out to be the game of the week or not, I guess we'll find out. But if Washington wins, or if they get a Tampa Bay loss earlier in the day, so you got to keep that in mind. If you're betting this game, you probably do not want to bet it until after you see what happens with Tampa Bay and Carolina. Obviously, if Tampa Bay loses, Washington may not be so inclined to win as much as they would be if everything was on the line, but that's completely up to you. I don't know what you guys think. We'll start with Tony. What do you think?
What do I think about the game, or
everything and that scenario? I mean, what would you do that yourself? Would you, if you were interested in that game, would you wait for the 1 o'clock game, or you don't really care?
I don't care about that. No. I mean, look, I think we're talking about Penix and Daniels.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Look, I thought the Falcons were my top play last week, in part because I thought that the Giants' issues on both sides of the ball, injury-wise, and their lack of their apathy for football at this moment would contribute to the Falcons really looking good, and because I thought Penix would excel in his debut. And, they should have beaten the Giants much worse than they did. The interception wasn't his fault. I thought Pitts had some drops. London, who left the game injured, had some drops, and he was fantastic. So I think he'll be fine as far as making his first road start. And he gives the Falcons an opportunity to win out these last 2 games and win the NFC South. And a lot of us, I think, thought that ship had sailed. Didn't expect, obviously, the Bucs to lose to the Cowboys, and now with 2 very winnable games that Tampa will be heavily favored in, they become the biggest Washington fans in the world on Sunday night. So, but I will wrap it up by saying that I don't think Penix's inexperience will contribute to Atlanta's struggles, if they do struggle on the road in Landover.
You guys share the same opinion?
Well,
Well, Go ahead, Jim.
I have a bit of an issue with upgrading Penix from a inexperienced rookie because of beating the Giants is like beating my old high school team. And I'm not sure that my old high school team wouldn't have been favored over them. And believe me, they were bad. That was a bad football team I played on. So this Giant team has just quit. I mean, they just quit weeks ago, and they haven't showed up in anything. They're just not competitive. So now you got Penix, who, I'm not going to take anything away from him. His ability in college, what he looked like last week was all great. But now he's going to play against a team that's going into the playoffs that has a good coach, has a good quarterback, albeit a rookie, but he's a guy that's played 15 games. And Penix has played 1 game against a high school team. So I don't know. I mean, you said it, Greg, national TV, first game on the road, rookie. I don't know what to expect from him because he hasn't been around long enough to know that. And it's a tough spot. Now, what's Washington's motivation? What are they playing for? Why would they be super interested to go out there and bust their tails to win this game?
Who was that, Washington?
Yes.
Oh, because they're not in the playoffs yet.
Yeah, they could still be caught.
Yeah, they haven't clinched yet.
Then that makes the line make sense.
Yeah.
That's my point is it makes sense. They're more experienced. They're well coached. They've got a winning record.
Yeah.
They've got a lot of momentum coming. I mean, they just beat what we thought was the number 1 team in football a couple of weeks ago in Philadelphia. They just beat them. And the other team at home beat a high school team with a rookie quarterback with 1 game experience. I just don't know what to expect from Michael Penix. I think he's going to be a great pro. I'm not taking anything away from him, but usually we have to see more from a guy before we start anointing him and putting a crown on him.
I mean, my take on it is and again, look, I can't dispute your high school team that they played because that was the entire partial part of my rationale. Like, the Giants aren't going to show up here, but I was a huge Penix fan, and what I saw from the Falcons was a significant upgrade from what we've seen from them with Cousins at the home.
No question.
I'll say one thing there. By the way, Washington, if they get the win, they will have 11 wins, and neither Tampa Bay nor Seattle can catch them with only 2 games to go. So it is important for Washington to win. I think we'll know what Seattle's situation is tonight, and if they beat the Bears tonight, they could have a possibility of getting 10 wins. So they will not have been eliminated. So it becomes
Seattle can't get a wild card.
No, they can't. They have to win the division.
Okay, there must be some other situation. Okay, with Atlanta, keep in mind that Dan Quinn, and I don't know if it's worth all that much from this standpoint. He used to coach the Falcons for like 5 or 6 years. I think he was the coach when they were in the Super Bowl and blew that big lead thanks to Kyle Shanahan. But nonetheless, he has some familiarity with some of the longtime players on that team. Not that counts for much. What I think is more important, he's a veteran coach with a defensive background going up against a rookie quarterback. Now there's film on him in actual game conditions, albeit against the Giants. So I think that Washington is in a very favorable situation. Atlanta, of course, will know what they need to do when Tampa Bay plays earlier. And if Tampa Bay loses to fall to 8-8, Atlanta win would clinch the division for them because they hold the tiebreaker. If they lose and Tampa Bay's 8-8, it could still come down to next week where Atlanta plays, I think, Carolina, and Tampa Bay plays New Orleans. So Atlanta, it's somewhat important for them, but not nearly as important, I think, for Washington, who is playing to sew up a playoff spot.
No, that's a good point, Andy, because, Dan Quinn, he didn't want to leave there, and he hasn't faced him as a head coach. So, he gets an opportunity to do damage against the owner. It's not about the fans. It's not about the players. It's about the owner, because the owner is the one that fires you. So this is Dan Quinn's chance to stick it to his owner, or at least give him a chance to stick it to him. Because if Atlanta loses and Tampa wins, Tampa is in much better shape next week, having to only have to beat New Orleans. Because Carolina, the way they're playing, they could win these next 2 weeks against Atlanta and Tampa Bay.
They're both at home.
Yeah. So, all right. Victor, you got a total on this one?
Actually, I do. And what is it? 47.5 for the game. Atlanta's 5-10 over under on the season. Washington, exact opposite, 10 overs, 5 unders on the season. And while I'm trying to find some sort of over angle in the game that is bettable, I'm going to hold off on the full game over. We know Sunday night games have gone 67% under the total this season, 5, 10, and 1. 44.3 combined points per game in Sunday night games. With that said, I think there's some value in the first half over the total, particularly at the current line. 23.5 is the current line in this particular game. 24 is a key number in the NFL when it comes to first halves. Think of the 3 popular scoring combinations that can result in the game finishing at 24 exactly in the first half. 21-3, 17-7, 14-10. 3 very common first half scores. On the season, we got 2 teams who have done much better in the first half of their games when it comes to overs than in the second half of their games. Washington 9-4-2 this season. That's 9 overs, 4 unders in the first half of their games, including 5-2-1 playing at home. Washington first half, 26.8 combined points per game for Washington games in the first half this season. Atlanta not quite as good, 9-6 over under in the first half of their games this season. Remember, those numbers were all basically with Cousins. 4-4 over under at home for Atlanta, but 5-2 over under on the road in the first half of their games. Atlanta first half games, 25.8 points per game. Second half, only 18.9. They're actually one of the best under teams in the second half, but that's for another story, guys. Pencil me in, particularly if you get that line of 23.5 or less points. We're going to play a small little chunk here on over in the first half between these 2 teams.
It doesn't concern you a little bit that, I mean, technically Morris is a defensive coach and you've got Penix making his first road start, so you want to kind of
rookie quarterback, absolutely. And I want, again, no part of the full game over.
No, I'm just meaning
but I still think there's value in the first half. I still think we can get to 24 points in the first half of this game, Tony.
Weather-wise, 28 degrees, no wind, so that's good.
Okay.
Okay, and then, of course, the other really big one for 2 playoff teams in the NFC and the NFC North is Green Bay and Minnesota. And once again, you talked about the road team being the favorite here. The Packers have become the favorite. Well, the general public has moved that line to Green Bay 1. Keep in mind, the road team is 3-0, straight up against the spread the last 3 in the series, including Minnesota's win in week 4 of this year. The Packers, though, are 16-8 against the spread in the last 24 true road dogs. And I say true road because I didn't include the game earlier this year against the Eagles. The Packers are also 5-1 straight up in their last 6. They've covered 5 straight. Minnesota, meanwhile, 8-0, 5-2-1 against the spread in their last 8. What do you guys think about the Packers being the favorite, and who do you like in the game?
Well, I just don't understand the number. I think that Minnesota should be probably 2.5 point favorite in the game, based on their record, based on the short week, based on the outdoor team coming indoors. Even though they have revenge, I can put a lot of stock in revenge, but not at these numbers. At these numbers, you're basically looking at who wins the game. I already bet Minnesota. I bet Minnesota money line. Now I could be taking Minnesota +1, but that doesn't matter. I mean, it's pretty much the same thing. So I like Minnesota. I think they have the coaching. I think not that there's a disparity in coaching, but I think they're quality. They have a quality coach. Quarterback's been playing red hot. they've got wide receivers, including Jefferson, that are excellent. There's pros and cons on both sides, but the fact that Green Bay should probably be getting 2.5 points, maybe even 3 points based on the overall record. And it doesn't make sense. I don't understand the line. I just don't get it.
I made it Minnesota minus 248.5, which I think is right on or close to the total, and pretty much what you're saying, laying the two. I mean, let me take a look as I speak on what the opener was. But I mean, obviously, sharp money came in and moved the line because it's not the public that moved it, and
Correct.
so we've got. It started off Minnesota -1, and now I see it as a pick 'em everywhere. So yeah, I don't see +1s yet.
What did you say? What moved it?
Like sharp money, like big respected bettors.
Oh, they're not the public?
No. Not at all.
What are they?
It's pros against the Joes. The
Okay.
professional bettors versus the Joe Q public.
And so does that mean that every time it's moved, it's pros against Joes, or only sometimes where you can see
No, you have
the difference?
First of all, you don't get much early week action from the Joes because they really don't have the lines available. They don't establish their own opinions often. And Andy follows this really close. What I see is Minnesota open 1.5 or 2. And right now I've got bet 365 is Green Bay 1. Everybody has Green Bay except when you go over to this last column here. Let me see. This is FanDuel has, and I don't know if this is actually updated accurately, but they have Minnesota 1.5. Now that's a big difference. But like I said, I can't promise you that's not technology and it's not really updated. But FanDuel.
So if it's moved early in the week, then you know it's the pros. But if it's moved like on the weekend close to the game, then that's the Joes.
Generally,
you can't
100% say that.
Right.
Because, I mean, I know some late bettors that will go in and take value. Well, there's a positive EV, which is expected value, that comes into play. They don't care who's playing. They have power ratings, and you could take the names off the board. They never even care who the teams are.
They
just
play
look at the
numbers.
numbers. They play numbers, and they're different. They don't look and say, "Well, that quarterback and that coaching." They don't give a shit. They have
Who puts these numbers together?
Well, you take a guy like Fezzik. I mean, he doesn't care. He just has a number, and he bets the number. I mean, there's a lot of guys like that. It's to them, it's a numbers game.
So each of them have their own separate formulas, though. It's not like
Oh,
one.
absolutely. And
I think a lot of it is that if there's a 2.5 out there, you lay it. If there's a 3.5 out there, you take it.
Correct.
Doesn't matter the matchup.
That's correct.
The line history I'm looking at, DraftKings wise, it opened 2 and it's currently Minnesota 1. So they're the only book that I see that actually has Minnesota favored. Everything else is pick 'em. And Jim, I don't have bet 365, so you've got them favoring Green Bay.
I got like 20 books in front of me,
and then from what I'm seeing, most books are heavy on Green Bay money and handle at the moment. Not heavy on handle, but heavy on money.
Any news on Minnesota injuries or sitting players out?
Not that I've seen.
Well, they're not going to sit anybody out if they can play because this number one seed is big.
And I think it may come down to the Detroit Minnesota game next week. Might end up deciding. I'm not sure how meaningful this game is for both teams.
No, it's very meaningful for Minnesota because they need to be in position.
Yeah.
So it's very meaningful.
What is the motivation for Green Bay? We know they're in the playoffs.
Right. I don't see there isn't.
I don't see any. Yeah.
They're pretty much committed to their seed.
So what the hell are they betting?
Yeah.
Are these the same people? Is he the same pros that put the Packers as the what were they? the 2.5 point favorite against Seattle?
Well, a lot of these numbers, Greg, are based off power ratings. And a lot of that's why the Jets were favored a lot, because they were power rated higher than a lot of the teams that they were facing.
And the pros lost their asses all year long betting on them.
Yeah, absolutely, no question.
Including last week.
Nobody's saying
always
that this is
win.
right. This is just the why this line is what it is. But in this case, I agree with Jim that I would see from a number of reasons that I made Minnesota 2. I think that's the right number.
I agree with Tony.
I would say almost anything up to 3 would be playable.
I wouldn't lay 3, but I would be on the money line.
Money line, yeah.
I'm on the money line anyway in Minnesota. I get the Vikings on the money line.
Greg, another aspect of pros versus Joes or squares versus sharps that Tony just touched on is the fact that there's some websites out there that will reveal or will show you the amount of bets in a given game versus the amount of total money wagered in a given game. So if you see one side where the amount of bets or wagers is high, yet the majority of the money is on the other side, it means the higher dollar wagers. The whale money is on perhaps the other side. The sharper money is perhaps on the other side. So again, Tony touched on it. I'm sure Jim has access to that. Everybody here has access to some of the websites that reveal that key information as well.
The example, there's a lot of $20, $50 bettors out there in the world. And then you get all these $20 and $50 bettors come in throughout the week. And then you got one guy shows up at the window with $1 million. Well, there goes all the 20.
Right.
Right.
So that doesn't make the $1 million better the sharpest better in the world. That means he's just a very rich person.
Yep.
That made a play. But the $1 million might be Elon Musk, which is absolutely nothing to him. So
unless you know who it is and you follow that person, it really shouldn't affect you.
Right. If it's Billy Walters, then we follow along, right?
Yeah.
Well, the show that I do in Las Vegas at the restaurant, which we call the Pizza Show, and Andy lives in Las Vegas, he knows what I'm talking about. Well, Greg sees it too. The guys that are on the set, many of them are $50,000 and $100,000 bettors, and they win. And bookmakers don't want their action. And the only reason, and bookmakers have the right to turn away action. There's no law that says you must take someone's bet if you know who it is. So we had an interesting situation. The guy sitting next to me is a huge bettor and he's a huge winner. One of the biggest bookmakers in the world was sitting in the audience. The guy in the audience had previously hired the guy that was sitting next to me to help him settle his numbers after the guy next to me made his plays. That's respect. The guy next to me started with $300 many years ago. He's now worth $17 million betting sports. What do you think?
Well,
you really want to
you
really want to book his action? Do you really want to?
I've never really understood why bookmakers would want to refuse your action as opposed to limit your action, because if they know you're a winner, that would help them adjust their lines for everybody who comes in later.
And that's what this man did.
Well, I mean, that's what Circa's current rep is that they will not refuse your action.
Yeah,
They'll take it. They might limit, and that's why they've become such a highly respected book. Jeffrey Benson and I have become buddies where I'll reach out and I met him when I was entering the contest. I didn't enter this year, so I didn't see him. But I mean, he's great. We should look to have him on at some point. Just coming on and talking about the philosophies that go into the back room and decision making.
All right. Well, there's one more game to talk about that really has a lot to play for, and that is Denver and Cincinnati. Cincinnati is the 3.5 point favorite, and Denver needs the win to clinch a playoff berth. But if they lose and Cincinnati obviously wins, Cincinnati is still alive, but they still need help. They still need not only Denver to lose the last game of the season against a Kansas City team playing with backups, but they also need the Colts or the Dolphins to lose. And the Dolphins have a little bit tougher competition. They're both on the road, Cleveland and the Jets, whereas the Colts get the Giants this week and then are host to Jacksonville Jags next week. So
yeah, the Colts have a shot to make the playoffs.
yes, they're in good shape.
You know, the funny thing about the Colts is, and I'm going to bring this up, in the preseason, and I know you guys all follow this, Steichen, who's the head coach, he said, we have a great chance to really be a power running game. We got Richardson, who had very little college experience, especially his quarterbacking skills are questionable on short passes. And we got Taylor, and we got this offensive one. And then he comes out and he starts throwing the ball everywhere. And obviously Richardson's not really that good at that, you know, at least on the short passes. And then he brings in Flacco because Richardson's not doing, but that's not the game plan he said he was going to have. No. And then last week they ran the ball the whole game, and Richardson threw the ball 11 times. A professional quarterback that threw the ball 11 times in a game has got to be the low water mark ever. So
that should be the case again this week against the Giants.
And they scored 38 points too on offense.
Yeah. Yes. if they run the ball against the Giants, how the hell are the Giants going to, A, keep up with them, and B, stop them, because the Giants don't even play?
Yeah.
Well, what do you think about the Cincinnati-Denver game? Cincinnati's won their last 3 against Dallas, Tennessee, and Cleveland. They're 7-1 straight up and against the spread versus losing teams this year. 0-7 straight up against winning teams. That's what the Denver Broncos are, a winning team. The Bengals have not defeated one of them all season.
Right now, I am looking at, I mean, obviously this is Saturday's marquee game, so I'm hoping to form an opinion on it. But personally, that opinion is not going to be formed until closer to kickoff because there's significant rain in the forecast. So if the rain is light, you got to ride Burrow, in my opinion, and you have to ride that experience, especially at home with the line so short. If it is raining significantly, then I would take a flyer on the Broncos because they have the significantly better defense. And I do trust Bo Nix to be a solid game manager, even though he's a rookie. You know, and what you mentioned, Greg, the fact that the Bengals have struggled against teams that actually know what they're doing. Obviously, the Broncos are well coached. You know, so to me, this is entirely reliant on the rain. And then I'll throw it to Victor on this one. I think the total is a little too high if there's rain in the forecast because I believe it's hovering near 50.
I agree.
Yeah, I've been burned on Cincinnati way too often this season to make a play on the Bengals, even though I think it's a good situation. And I'm rooting for them because I've got future tickets on them. So I just want to see them win the game and make the playoffs. But I've been hurt too many times by the Bengals this year to really feel any confidence that they're still a long shot to make the playoffs because one more Charger win and one more Denver win, whether it be this week or next week, and both are 2 games. And all 3 of those teams that are 4, 5, and 6 in the wild card are eliminated. And I think the Chargers have a real good chance at winning at New England this week. And I wouldn't be shocked if Denver beats Cincinnati this week or Kansas City next week, and that would doom Cincinnati.
Yeah, I hear exactly what you're saying, Andy. And when I first looked at the game, I was like, oh, you know, I like the way Cincinnati's rolling. Maybe they're destined. And then it's like, then it's like, it does hit you right away without looking at the stats. You're like, wait a second. I mean, they've struggled against good teams, haven't they? And that's when I looked at it and I was like, yeah, well, I can't believe they haven't beaten a good team all season. But that's why, like you said, they disappoint you every time you think there's something's good's going to happen. Like they'll lay the egg like they did against Pittsburgh. Just when you thought maybe this is nope, not going to happen. They're going to, and it's not because of their offense, it's because of their defense. They can't stop anybody. And who's to say that that's going to end? By the way, it's 3.5. So doesn't that mean we should be taking the 3.5? 2.5 lay, 3.5 take.
And Cincinnati's.
I'm trying to learn here.
Cincinnati's 3 minus 25, 20, 20, 17. So it's Cincinnati like 3.25 at this point. I mean, there are no 3.25s, but when you put the juice into it, it's Cincinnati like minus 3.25.
I would imagine though, I guess it really does depend on what happens on leading up to kickoff, but I would imagine that line is more likely to move to 3.5, 4 than it is to come down.
It definitely favored that direction. Yeah.
Do you have give me like a dog that you would take to win the game outright this week? Like someone of significance. You've got Dallas's line has gone down now. It's 6.5, and so the money line is probably down in the 2s now. Probably. Let's see, it's 220. So
when Philadelphia was 8.5 in this game, and at one point I took Dallas to cover. I'm not going to take Dallas to win, but I took them to cover. So that's a dog, but at 6.5, I'm not going to take it. No.
Yeah. So money lines, like you said, Tony, Carolina. Look, the way they're playing, they're about a 3-1 on the money line. They've covered 6 straight. They've won 3 out of 6 as dogs. So again, this is all as dogs. 3-3 straight up, 6-0 against the spread. Meanwhile, Tampa's beaten Carolina 4 straight, but only 2-2 ATS, including the overtime winner on December 1st as a 6-point favorite. Tampa Bay's only been a favorite at home. This is the 4th time all season. They're 2-1 straight up ATS as a home favorite. So would Carolina, would they be a good dog, a money line play?
I was looking at that one. One thing about Tampa Bay, the thing they haven't had the last couple of years was a good offense. They couldn't put points on. You go back to the first 2 years of Brady at quarterback when they went to the Super Bowl and made the playoffs the next year. They averaged, I think, 28 to 30 points per game. They are up around 28, 29 points this year after averaging about 21, 22 last year. So this Tampa Bay offense is much improved. And you wonder if Carolina, maybe played its best game last week.
But I mean, look, the Cowboys, they beat up Baker Mayfield to the point it looked like one of those bad football movies where you win seeing the quarterback. I mean, Baker Mayfield, good Lord.
He got beat up.
I mean, and when he makes a play like he did the last play of the game, and then the guy fumbles the ball, it's just
insane.
It's like, God, can you give me a break here? I'm like killing myself. But that's been the Bucs all season, and they've got injuries again on defense. It looks like Winfield's not going to play again. Yep. And he's, again, I keep saying it, he's their best defender. So, look, I don't know where the Chargers game came from on defense, but their regular defense showed up again against the Cowboys. You just can't trust their defense. All right. Before we wrap up and turn our attention to college football, a couple more things. Jim's got to run.
I do have to go.
Let's go with the high fives. So we're going to go around the horn here. And we will start. We will start with Jim. Okay. And Jim, let me know when you're ready, and I'm going to go ahead and get the.
I'm ready right now. I'm just.
I got to get the clock ready. So
the clock.
Let's see. I got to. I got to do this.
That clock. That's what you.
Yes, these are 60-second shorts. They don't. If it's 61, they say no. You're on now, Jim.
Colts.
That's it. Over. Okay. 3 seconds short.
Professional football team playing a high school team. It's the same thing. Tony made a play last week against the Giants. I'm making a play this week against the Giants. The Colts should win the game, maybe 28, 30, 31 to maybe 3, 6, or 10, maybe.
Keep going.
I'm done. That's it.
That's not going to work. I don't think there's such a thing called a 20-second short, but that's okay. You got your pick. So,
well, I have to run.
You got to run anyway, Jim. You and I will talk on Saturday. Actually, we'll talk with Mark. We've got our Talking Point show on Friday, so we'll talk some more NFL, maybe a little college football and such, and hopefully real soon, because we're only a week away from January. That means we'll start talking college basketball soon.
Have a good weekend, everybody. And if we don't,
you too, Jim.
Happy New Year. If I don't speak to you before next Wednesday.
You too. Party responsibly.
I'm going to start drinking right now.
Eggnog or some serious stuff.
Some scorpion. He's got to grab one of those scorpions in his home. They might make some good cider. Okay. Next up, let's go with Andy. Are you ready, Andy? 3, 2, 1, go. I'm going to go with the Rams laying the 6.5 over Arizona. I wouldn't be surprised if it goes up to 7 before kickoff on Saturday.
The Rams control their fate for winning the NFC West and would clinch the title with a win here. Seattle lost or tied at Chicago on Thursday, so they can't clinch it unless those things happen. But they also have major revenge as they were thoroughly dominated in their Week 3 loss at Arizona 41-10, in which they were outgained 489 to 245, allowing over 230 yards, both running and passing. Arizona is off a miserable effort, as I mentioned before, in Carolina, allowing 206 yards to a Carolina offense that had come into the game averaging just 103 per game. And you have to wonder what that has done to the psyche of the Cardinals defense, who were eliminated as a result of the events of last week. Now they step up in class to face a team that has shown last year that they can overcome a bad early start to the season and make the playoffs as they did last year.
Ooh, that is going to be really close, but you're right on the money. I'll make it work. Good job, Andy. And the Arizona Cardinals. Look, this is going to be a good test for Jonathan Gannon as a head coach. Yes, he's lost Connor, but the fact is, and yes, they're eliminated. No question. But you got to keep going. And you still have Kyler Murray. You still have a lot of your team healthy. You got a chance to play spoiler. So it's a division game. It's a rival. I'm not saying they're going to win the game over it. I'm just saying, it's going to say a lot to me about Jonathan Gannon if this team competes. I think they need to compete. Yeah. So we'll see if they can do that. By the way, they're 0-8 against the spread. Their last 8 versus winning division opponents. 0-1 in that role this year. So that's Arizona. Okay. Are you ready, Tony?
Sure.
Okay.
Even though I'm watching Manchester United Boxing Day loss, it's going to sting.
Oh. Okay.
But
very good.
Count me down. I'm good. I've been doing it all show anyway.
Okay. You're ready.
All right, we're going to ride that Packers-Vikings game, and while we have wondered why Green Bay would be extremely motivated in this one, I do think they want to continue their upward trend. Matt LaFleur has done a nice job with Jordan Love of late. Love is still a little too inconsistent to want to throw into that conversation of guys that will get out of a very loaded NFC, but if he continues to make strides, and it looks like Watson has avoided major injuries, you've got receivers there that he trusts like Reed and Wicks and Dobbs, who have made strides. They've averaged 30.4 points over their last 5 games. Actually 32.6 points over their last 5 games. The Vikings have averaged 30.4 over their last 5, and they won 31-29 in that first meeting. It was a game that was dominated by Minnesota for the first 3 quarters, and then Green Bay made a 22-3 run to make it close. I think Minnesota had to pick up an onside kick just to deliver the victory. So they'll look for the sweep here. Obviously, they need the game more. I think it's going to be high scoring. Give me the over on 48.5 points between the Packers and the Vikings.
Over, just like you were on your short of about 10 seconds. So I'll figure that out.
Chop it
All
up.
right. So over on the Green Bay Minnesota game. And speaking of totals, that's our total guy. Vic, are you ready?
I will. Don't start the clock yet because I want to explain this before I get into it. I actually
Okay.
feel pretty strongly about it. I may run slightly over a minute. But, when Greg was sending us the format and some of the questions for this week's podcast, he mentioned if you like a teaser, mention a teaser. If you like a prop play, mention a prop play. And that's where I'm going to go for my 60-second is we're going to do a player prop on Sunday that I feel very, very strongly about. And you can start that at any time. Now, I'll even count it down myself. I'll go 3, I'll go 2, I'll go 1. In a perfect game script scenario, we're going to take a look at this Carolina-Tampa Bay game, and I'm going to pounce on running back Bucky Irving, and we're going to play the Bucky Irving elevator, not the escalator. Tampa favored by 8 over Carolina. They have the top rushing matchup of the week, particularly with them favored by 8 points. They're almost a double-digit favorite. They're taking on the NFL's worst rushing defense. Carolina allows 172 rushing yards a game, 33 more than the next worst team. In the last 7 games, they've allowed 6 guys to get 100 or more rushing yards. James Conner, Rico Dowdell, Saquon Barkley, Tyrone Tracy, and 4 weeks ago, Bucky Irving. Season high 152 against the Carolina Panthers. Worst defensive line in all of football, Carolina. Desperate to find some linebacking help, Carolina. Game flow or game script suggests Tampa gets out to a big lead and then pounds the rock in the second half. We're going to skip the escalator where you play 8 players totals over, and just go right to the top and play Bucky Irving over 100 rushing yards. And you can find it at your sports book somewhere in the area of plus 220 to plus 240. Big game for Bucky Irving and the Bucks. We're planning to go over 100 rushing yards.
That's a good one. All right. We got our first official player prop for the show. And that is, so I'll definitely see what that looks like, because it makes a lot of sense to me. And it just shows you too how Carolina, they're going to get better next year. They're going to get Brown back. I mean, he's a huge loss in the middle of that defense. One of the more underrated defensive tackles in the game. Yep. And they've lost their linebacker, like you said, the linebacking unit. So they're going to be a team to keep an eye on next year. The linebacking
unit it's a mash unit right now at Carolina. You can just roll up and down the field, and that opens up everything for the Buccaneers. But yeah, big game for Bucky.
And yet they have still been able to win 3 of the last 6 and almost beat Philadelphia. So
playing very good football.
Yeah.
Again, we'll consider the first half over in that game. And maybe even the full game over, too.
Okay, so there you go. That's our NFL coverage now.
I was going to mention that, and I don't know, Victor, did you touch upon the total in a Panther game? Because I see that as a high-scoring game.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah.
And both of those teams have been, I think one is 10-5 to the other, and the other maybe 9-6 or something. They've been very high-scoring teams, and you wouldn't necessarily think that because of the Carolina offense for much of the year. But since Bryce Young got his reprieve, Carolina's been able to put some points on the board in most of their games.
Here, I got a good stat for you in regards to that. In the 9 NFC South division games this season, 8 out of the 9 have gone over the total on the year. Almost a perfect 9-0. Every single game in this division seems to be high scoring. You're right, Andy.
And that's with some bad offenses like Carolina for part of the season. And
Saints, really, right? Yeah.
Saints, have been really horrible with it, regardless of who's at quarterback. Although they did start nicely to this season, but that's when all the injuries
they
started.
First 2 games, yeah,
and that was pretty much it.
Okay, so let's now turn our attention to college football because we're going to be back on the air, it looks like, a week from today, which is Thursday, and that is the day after the big games. That's correct, right?
Yes.
The big games are on Wednesday. That's New Year's Day. You
got one game. You got one game on Tuesday, the Penn State game,
the Fiesta Bowl.
The Fiesta Bowl. And then the other 3 are all spaced out on, I believe those are the only games on New Year's Day, if I recall, and they're spaced out nicely.
Yep, they are. And then you're also going to look at the following week's games, which are going to be on a Thursday and a Friday. So that's going to be the Orange and the Cotton Bowl. So keep that in mind. It's not no weekend games in the semis. Those are Thursday night and Friday night games to decide who's going to the national championship game.
We do have the highly anticipated bowl game on Saturday, January 4th, to end the official bowl game season between Liberty and Buffalo.
I don't understand that. I don't understand. They do that like every year. Like the last bowl game is the game nobody wants to watch.
And it's the Bahamas Bowl, so I'll watch it for the scenery.
Yeah. It seems like Buffalo's always in the Bahamas Bowl. So we've got a playoff situation coming up where, again, it's going to be almost a week from now. But we know pretty much everything. I'm sure I'd be surprised if you guys didn't already know who you're going to go with. And we have all of the favorites won. I know that you hear people talking about the blowouts and such, and you hear about, but at least Indiana was here. It's like,
let's be accurate. You hear people whining about the blowout.
What's that?
You hear people whining about the blowout.
Yeah. And the thing was, though, the Clemson Texas game was actually the closest game, because that was a game that was you had a whole quarter to go before Texas made it a 2-score game, and Clemson still had a whole quarter to try to do something about it.
And they had that late goal line stop that Clemson might have made it a 7-point game, albeit it's unlikely they would have had another opportunity to score, but it could have made it a lot closer.
Yeah, the Indiana game, they were never in it. That was one of those things where Notre Dame just, okay, you want to score, you can score. We're just going to milk the clock, and there you go. And they got it's just nobody cared. So anyway, you've got the first matchup, which is going to be the Fiesta Bowl, Penn State and Boise. It's a big line. I'm not sure whether or not, what do you guys think about the line, first of all, being, what is it? Is it like up to 12 now? Something like that? First impressions on the Boise State, Penn State line. Are you surprised that the line is that big?
Yes and no, because Boise, they weren't as sharp late in the season as they were early, and maybe a lot of it had to do with trying to get Gentry the record and all that. It's a big game. Last week I think we all agreed that it was a big game for Penn State and Jim and Franklin. Even though it wasn't the big game, it was still at least an important. It was an important.
But this one isn't
win.
either. This one actually isn't either, though.
It is to the extent. It is to the extent that it puts them in the Final Four.
But you know what they'll say, and they'll be justified. But it wasn't against Oregon or Ohio State. Yeah. So
this is the one game. I was going to say this is the one game that I have not really made a strong opinion on of the four. I have on the other three.
Tony.
All right. No, give me 1 second. I'm gonna make my Notre Dame Georgia line, because unlike I'll make my line and then I'll go look at what it actually is. That's how the way I operate.
I won't say the line then until you go ahead and make it the line.
We're talking Penn State.
What do you think the line should be?
Penn State, Boise State?
No. Oh, you don't. Yeah. What do you think the line should be?
I have that down now. 8.5 and 53. So let me go look real quick.
I think it's 11.
It is 10.5. It opened 10.5 and 54.5, and now it is 11 and 52.5. So total wise, definitely in agreement. I really think that I'm definitely going to be on Boise State. I have them outright, but I think I respect the hell out of Penn State. Tyler Warren is another Brock Bowers type, I think, in that he'll hit the ground running in the NFL. I respect Kotelnicki and that offense, and I think he's imaginative. Yes, James Franklin hasn't won big games, and he's somewhat of an excuse maker, but I'm kind of a fan of his. I think he gets results. Respect what he did at Vandy and all of that. And certainly Drew Aller is a pretty good quarterback. I just think that Boise State is getting the shaft, maybe rightfully so because of the conference they're in. But tell me a big game, I'll wait, where they haven't shown up and imposed their will. And that includes Oregon.
You mean this season?
This season.
They haven't
had many.
Oregon. No, I'm just saying that's the only game they played this year. That's a big game.
UNLV isn't big. UNLV the first time.
Well,
UNLV
no, I mean, but it's
in a championship game.
No, I mean, but you can't really. Yeah, I mean.
Well, look, I think that they.
I mean, you don't need to. I mean, I don't think. My point is, you don't need to go past Oregon. That's all you need to do. That's fine.
I would be stunned.
That's respectful that they actually almost won that football game.
I would be stunned if Boise State gets blown out here. I think.
I don't think they're going to. Yeah, I agree.
So to me, like the way that I make lines, it's somewhat of an expectation and what's in my mind, and they kind of marry the two. So it's kind of like a tip to me, where if it's significantly one way, in this case it is, because it crosses the 10.5 into the 11 now. 8.5 to me is like, all right, it's my expectation of how I view things and how the public's probably viewing it, and I would even go 7.5 on to that. I think Boise State's going to show up in this game. I personally think Boise State's going to win this game. I think we talked about that in our bracket picks, last week. So, that's where I stand on this. I respect Penn State. It's no slight against Penn State. I just think, what is it that Boise State put on their T-shirts? Keep doubting us, something along those lines. I'm gung ho on that. I think Gentry is a difference maker of a running back, and obviously a running back can't make a difference unless you get the push up front. We'll see if they get that push up front, and if they do, they'll be able to pass off it because they have two pretty good receivers that can make some waves. So It'll be an interesting environment indoors. Certainly, it's
It's the
in
Fiesta Bowl.
right. It's in Glendale.
Oh, they're putting it back there. It used to be so much fun with the Fiesta Bowl. Where did they play? Was that at Arizona Stadium or Arizona State Stadium? Sun Devil
It was
Stadium?
Ari- I think it was
Sun Devil
Arizona
Stadium,
State,
yeah.
Oh yeah, well, yeah.
That used to be
I mean,
much funner when it used to be there.
It's been at State Farm for a while, for at least a
And,
decade.
let's also forget, by the way, it's not a home game for Penn State. So
Right, it's
you
not a
might not
home
expect
game.
the same effort that it was last week.
Right.
And then
Well,
I'm
it's
sure
not
Penn
cold.
State's going to travel, but you don't think that A, Boise will travel, and B, most
Absolutely
of the
they
people
will.
there will get behind the underdog, the happy-go-lucky Rashad Ashton Genty led Broncos, a Cinderella story. So
Where's
if
he
that
from,
game
by
is
the
tight,
way?
huh?
Where's Genty from?
Texas, I think.
Okay, so he did get some support from the neighbor.
But I mean, bottom line, I just think this is going to be a tight game. I expect Boise State to win. I'll happily take the 10.5, 11.
Money line too?
Yeah,
he's
sure.
got
What is
them.
it? Let me see
Yeah.
it. It is plus 330.
That's about what I thought.
Do you have anything on the game yourself, Victor?
I got a couple of comments, guys. Like Jim, I got to take off in a couple of minutes. Let me throw the comments out. First off, I'm in agreement that the dog looks like a solid play in this game. I don't think Penn State wins by more 7-point win, maybe even a 3-point win. And if it's that low, and of course, and Mark's got the in a 3-point game in the bowl stat report, I might add as well. So, yeah, money line worthy, definitely for Boise State. I think the Idaho fans, it's not that much of a travel situation for them like it is Penn State traveling across the country. So I'm in total agreement that I love the points in that particular game. A couple of comments let me throw out real quick here, guys, and then I'll add one more bowl game that I'm really looking forward to. From what's been played over the last couple of days in regards to bowls, my two comments are I've always enjoyed the Hawaii Bowl on Christmas Eve. Who hasn't? It's a Christmas Eve tradition, Hawaii Bowl. But you know what? I believe now we need a Christmas Eve bowl doubleheader because I kind of got a little antsy after that game ended, the Hawaii Bowl. So I think they should consider a second Christmas Eve bowl game, maybe some sort of bowl game Christmas Eve doubleheader.
Maybe that's where they could play the Bahamas Bowl as the early game on Christmas Eve. So you've got Hawaii East and then the Hawaii Bowl West later in the day.
I like it. And then in regards to yesterday's action on Christmas Day, I believe the NFL has now played, I think it's 30-day games on Christmas Day since 1989, over a 35-year period. It's just under one per game, one per day average, no more than 3 NFL games on a Christmas Day in the past.
And by the way, I believe that's also when the holiday falls on Sunday. They limit the number of games. They either play more on Saturday or more on Monday.
Or more on Monday. You're right. But you know what I missed? I think there should be a new tradition, a Christmas night bowl game, because I started getting the shakes right after that Houston-Baltimore game ended yesterday, knowing that in bowl season, there's not a game on Christmas night. I think we deserve a new tradition. Also have a bowl Christmas night game.
You got to give the kids a break, though. You got to give the kids a break, Victor.
I mean, wait a minute now, Andy, you just talked about it. We just went through that period in late October and November where there was football every single day of the week.
Except
like
Wednesday.
A 55-day period, right?
Yeah.
The 55 consecutive days.
Oh, no, Wednesdays including college, yeah.
Right, including college. So we're in the middle of the holiday season. There should be football every night.
Hey, they're entertainers, man.
That's the way it is.
I could understand
the
college games on Christmas Eve because Christmas Eve is certainly more frequent that the families get together the night before Christmas morning and all that, the Christmas Eve, as opposed to Christmas night when, okay, the hullabaloo of the holiday is pretty much coming to an end and an NFL game would make perfect sense.
Victor, you're not a basketball guy at all?
No, and
right.
I know the NBA is ruled on Christmas Day. I'm cool with that, but no, I have not done too much in regards to basketball. Guys, one more thing before I do got to take off. There's one bowl game that I'm looking forward to. It's an under the radar game that is on my list for must watch, and it's the game with the highest total, the First Responders Bowl in Gerald Ford Stadium, where SMU plays their home games in Dallas, Texas, on January 3rd, Friday. That's the game that I'm looking forward to. That maybe not a lot are. You got two teams from the state of Texas. We've been on many North Texas overs this season. Yeah. We've played a couple of Texas State overs this season. The line is somewhere around 63.5, 64. But it's the one game that I'm looking forward to, in addition, of course, to all the second round playoff games that I think should be a very entertaining game down there in Big D.
Well, what you could do next year, Vic, is you watch the first game on Christmas, you record the second game, you have dinner, you relax, you don't get anybody telling you what the score of the game is. Then after dessert, put the game on, and you have a game to yourself. And you can just fast forward the commercials if you like. And there you go. Then you have your own Christmas night game all to yourself.
Fast forwarding Beyonce.
All right, Vic.
Guys, I got to take off. Outstanding show.
Yes. Thank you, Vic. And we'll see you in 2025, probably.
Happy New Year, Vic.
Both of you guys, right back at you guys. Thanks again, guys.
Thanks, right. Vic. By the way,
just to wrap up the Christmas Eve thing, NBA people are talking, because the NFL is kind of moved in. I don't know if you saw the LeBron, I love the NFL, but Christmas is always going to be the NBA. Well, the NBA took Christmas Eve off, and I don't think they should anymore. I think they should understand that the NFL is always going to be king. And while they should continue to keep their Christmas tradition, there's no reason that they should be taking Christmas Eve off anymore. So I think Christmas Eve should also feature some NBA games.
Yeah, absolutely.
I like the way the NHL does it. They take 3 days off.
Yeah, they take basically the whole week off. They're back Friday, right?
Yeah, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I think they take off. And then
and then they'll have like teams that have to play like 4 games in 6 nights or something like that. It's like, come on, man, you're killing these guys. But hey, I agree. It's nice to give them one little holiday around the holidays. All right. You know what I also want to remind everybody to do too is to check out the bowl guide, the bowl newsletter. Let's just take a look at one of our recent shows here on Proline TV for an example. And you go to the comments section, and here it is. Let's see. Here it is. To subscribe to the 2024 College Football Bowl Guide. What you got to do is there's the link, and you click the link, and there you go. You go right to the store catalog at playbooksports.com, and this is where all of the newsletters are that you can purchase. So you got the totals tip sheet here. You got the regular newsletters. You got the basketball newsletter that's coming, available January 10th. Tony's can't wait for that to come out. And like I said, we're going to be talking college basketball as early as probably January. I know on the network, the channel, it'll definitely be January. On this specific show, probably won't be until after the season ends, or at least after the college season ends, because we'll probably have more time, of course, when the college football season is over. And then there's only a couple of NFL games to talk about. That's when we can start slipping in some college basketball. And that should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, that might be the week. That might be the week when they play the wild card round.
Could be.
I think
that's possible.
I think the only game we would have to talk about in the college football would be the championship game.
Yeah, I think the semis
on the 20th.
Are that week, and then come the wild card game. I believe that's how they're doing.
Yeah.
So just taking a look at the calendar.
I think the semis might be the same week as the wild card.
Yep. Same week. So you've got the Orange Bowl is the 9th, the Cotton Bowl is the 10th, and the wild card game's on the 11th.
Right.
So like you said, then right after that, the next show, we'll only have one championship game to talk about, which will be, and then of course the NFL playoffs.
Yeah,
okay.
4 games instead of 6 on that divisional weekend.
So
4 games. 4 games instead of 6, I think, on the wild card weekend.
Yes. Let's talk about the other games. And Arizona State's a big dog against Texas. I expected them to be a dog, but I didn't expect the line to be this big. because it's not in Texas. And to tell you the truth, I'm sorry, but I think Arizona State's just as good as Clemson. So they're just not getting any respect.
I think they're better than Clemson. I don't
They
think
might
they're
be
gonna
better
win,
than Clemson.
but I think I've already bet Arizona State because I could see this line coming down. The only thing I'm concerned about is will they be able to carry that momentum over from having last played the first week of December, so it'll be 3.5 weeks or something that they will have been off. But they were playing as well as any team in the country down the stretch, and they were beating some pretty good teams as well within the Big 12.
Unfortunately, the thing that really is the big disappointment is not having their star receiver available. Yeah. It didn't hurt them against Iowa State, but that's not Texas. And now Texas gets all this additional time to prepare and see what they did without him. Yeah, it's really tough.
Well, so does Arizona State get to prepare to counter what Texas might be expecting because they won't have seen much of the replacement receivers. And, it sort of works a little bit both ways. And I'm really Sark has done a nice job, but I'm really impressed with what Dillingham has done in 1 year.
It's been an amazing job. And who would have thought that this would even be possible? But look, I'm not big on this. Is to me more. I think it's a combination of the fact that Arizona State's been playing so well, their confidence is sky high, and Texas is just overrated because again, everything going on in the SEC is overrated, and we saw that with the Tennessee blowout to Ohio State, completely overrated. So that's the way I'm looking at this. I love the 13.5. I agree, it's probably asking too much. But it's not look, I'll put a bet on the money line. I'm just going to put a lot on it, but I'll put a little bit on it. But the 13.5, 14, if you want to buy the half a point's up to you. But what I'm seeing actually is possibly you can get it at -105. So they're trying to lure you into not getting that extra half a point. But I think Arizona State's good enough to cover the 14. What do you guys think?
Well, I'm with you on that.
Go ahead, Andy. Because
I was just going to say because I mentioned it a little bit before Greg continued that I don't think they can win the game. Doesn't mean I won't make a little play on it, but I took 14 when that line first came out. I mean, within the first 6 hours or whatever, because I do like what they've done. I like the quarterback play that had been overshadowed by Scabadoo or Scadaboo. With him getting all the deserved attention, and the defense has played decently well enough. And I was concerned about Texas's defense against Clemson, which was supposedly the best defense that Clemson would have seen all year outside of the defense they saw at Georgia at the beginning of the year, which as we later saw was not as good a Georgia defense as we've seen in years past. So the fact that Clemson was able to have that kind of success against Texas is a little bit concerning because I could see Arizona State not being that much different from Clemson.
Yeah, very disappointed in Clemson's defense. No question about it in that matchup.
Texas defense I'm talking about.
Well, I was also disappointed in Clemson's defense. But both defenses, because the thing that was disappointing about Texas's defense was that everybody knew they couldn't run the football. Everybody. Yeah. Which is why I don't know what these announcers, I mean, this is why some of these announcers I really can't stand them because they're so lazy for them to talk like they talk like they're bringing up this injury situation with Maffa like they don't know, dude. The guys, everybody in the world knows he can't move. So why are you making this to be an issue as this game is going on? There's no news story here. Everybody knew the kid couldn't play. So I would blame a lot of that on the staff that prepares the scouting reports for the announcers, because the announcers, they do so many games they can't be totally up to date on all the teams that they cover. Well, that's the job of the network scouting people. Yeah, whoever is to blame, bad job, and also bad job by the other thing. While we're on it, I really can't stand the play-by-play guys that can't just do their job. You know what play-by-play means? Understand the numbers, the jerseys, the players on it, and that's all I want to hear from you. The color guy, he can say whatever he wants. And that's why I think Al Michaels is great, because Al Michaels was specifically before every play, when every play is done, he's going to tell you who made the tackle, and he's always going to point that out. It's almost like, you're an extension of the scoreboard guy telling you exactly what's going on, who made the tackle and everything. That's your job as the play-by-play guy. And I'm sick and tired because my class yesterday I was watching that Houston-Baltimore game, and Houston had these awful jerseys, and I couldn't read what the hell the names on the jerseys were.
Is that what the beef was about the jerseys? The numbers? I think the jerseys were sharp, but I mean, most people
read the
with you, they
names.
thought they were awful.
What was that? Red on gray or something like
It
that?
was red on blue.
Blue. Okay.
So I there were a couple of plays that went on. I'm like, I don't know who that is. Who did that? And they didn't. Nobody said anything. Play by play. I had didn't even mention who that player was who was in the play on defense. And it's just so bad. It's so lazy. Tony, who do you like?
And by the way, that's especially important what you say, Greg, with fantasy players now, playing college football in both offense and defense, that they want to know what's going on in the game as opposed to just waiting for the box score to come out.
But everybody's got an ego nowadays, and you got to get your 2 cents in, and you got to say, these really, creative, wow plays and get your 2 cents in. All right, Tony, what do you think? Do you think the line's too big, or Texas going to rock?
Lines is obviously too big. I think you hit it right on the head. It's the SEC overrated and the Big 12 being disrespected. And look, again, I watched the Big 12 probably as much as most people that really follow the Big 12.
Central Florida, of course.
Right, that's my team, and I want to know what's going on in the conference. And most of these games, because there is no Big 12 network. Most of these games are on ESPN Plus, which I subscribe to, so you can go back and watch them archived and all of that. So I've seen all these teams. Now I'm looking at it just to be fair. The Arizona State, first of all, they played UCF, but they played them without Scatterby. And UCF led that game. Really convincingly led that game at one point. Then led them back, and in the fourth quarter, there was a very controversial late penalty that allowed Arizona State to survive. Otherwise, they wouldn't even be in the spot. But they haven't really played. I think their toughest game, honestly, is at Kansas State. They got BYU at home. They got a depleted Utah at home, and they really haven't played anybody. Their best non-conference game was Mississippi State, which obviously was a doormat in the SEC. So I understand the line, but I made it 10. Texas minus 10. So to see it at 13.5, that's where it's open, and it hasn't budged. Will it budge closer to kickoff? Probably with sharp money and people hoping for chaos and wanting to fade Texas. It'll probably get down to 13, 12.5. I don't see any way that it doesn't. I'll say that Levitt is not a fluke.
By the way, you don't think that the general public at large will say, "Oh, it's Texas" and all that, and they won't have heard of Arizona. I'm talking about the casual player that adds up to a lot of people and a lot of money.
Right, but
they know Texas,
but
they don't know Arizona State.
To bump it to 14.
Yeah, that's already a lot of points.
Well, that's when the professional buyback comes.
Right, absolutely. So Levitt is really talented. He's made a lot of strides. I remember him at Michigan State not thinking much of him.
He was terrible at Michigan State. Yeah.
But he's he was pretty good this year.
Well, look at Hauser. Hauser was nothing and then he goes to East Carolina, and now he's looking pretty decent. So that's why they have a new coaching staff.
And so how will he get along without Jordan Tyson? That's crucial. And then Scatterby is no fluke. I mean, this guy is not a fluke.
No.
So if they can get any push up front, he's going to be able to eat up clock, extend drives, and break tackles. Doesn't matter if you play for Texas or Georgia or whoever. I mean, that guy is a legitimate running guy.
Texas has a really good run defense, and
Texas's defense is the strength of the football team.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously the hype is on Ewers and the depth of that offense, of the running back room and the offensive line. But the strength of this year's Texas team, and the reason why they would win a national championship if they pull through, is a very talented defense that I don't think a lot of people saw coming. But again, too many points for me. It's probably something that I'll stay away from. And then as far as if I make a play on the game, I think it's going to be a lower scoring game than expected. I think Arizona State's best bet without Tyson is to chew up clock and hope to make it a fourth quarter game. And if Sarkisian sees that early, I think he pulls back on the bells and whistles and just tries to win this game straight up. So, I mean, to me, it's a 10-point game, maybe 27-17, and that gets me to 44. Numbers at 52. Give me the under.
I think the key may very well be Levitt, Clemson only ran for 76 yards against Texas. They passed for 336. So if they can work out the receiver issue, or maybe use the running backs as receiving options, and they can do what Clemson was able to do passing, and occasionally have some, do you stop Scadaboo? Well, you do if you have a decent. You don't if you have a decent passing game to complement him, and that may be part of the Arizona State game plan. Is we got to mix in a lot more passing than maybe we would like to, because that will give Scadaboo, number one, fewer rush attempts because they'll be passing more. That means he's fresher in the third and fourth quarter.
Arizona State's best game definitely was the Iowa State win in the Big 12 championship, just because of the of what was involved and how really dominant they were in that game.
And without Tyson.
Right. So it was without Tyson. It can be done. We'll see if they hang around. They've got to get it, either stay even, certainly in the turnover revenue. If they win it, then they've got a shot to maybe be in that game in the fourth quarter.
Well, that's the thing. Arizona State does have one of the best turnover margins in the nation. Yep. And they're going to need it, no question. They can't win this game without it. Look, if you look at that Clemson game, they had several opportunities that they just didn't take advantage of. I mean, you had what could have been a pick six if the dope doesn't get a penalty on the return. Stupid idiot. That's 7 points. You take points off the board right there. And there were a few other circumstances in the game that they just not take advantage of. And that's what you have to do. Arizona State, when the advantage is there, you've got to take advantage of it. And if you don't, you're not going to pull the upset off. You're not going to pull double-digit upsets off by not taking advantage of the opportunities that are there right in front of you. And that's what Arizona State has to do. As far as the other two games, you have Notre Dame and Georgia. And look, I don't care what anybody says. Nobody has any idea how this Gunnar Stockton kid's going to play. No idea. It's just a guess. And some people could say, well, they're going to rally around the backup quarterback, even though he played in the last game, he's going to start and it's a different setting and they're going to rally and blah, blah, blah. Or, hey, you know what? He's actually better. All right, well, let's see, but it's just one game. We don't even know. He can go out there and throw for 400 yards and it'll be the best game of his career. Or he could throw for 100 yards and he's going to be better than Carson Beck. So we have no idea how to react to this. With Notre Dame, I'm starting to feel even worse about their chances when now that they've lost Mills. It's one thing to lose Morrison. Now you lose Mills. It's starting to get to a point where it's like, come on. I mean, it's I gave you Morrison. I don't know. I got to give you Mills too. So it's asking a lot. But I do think we're going to be in for just another really, sort of similar type of game that we saw with Texas. I think it's a similar type of matchup where we're going to get probably lower scoring, I would guess, unless turnovers turn into points. Turnovers obviously going to be big. And Notre Dame's defense is legit. And will they be good enough to create turnovers for a quarterback that has no experience, playing in a game that is this big? So look, we saw what happened in the Alabama-Georgia series when what was it? Who was it? Was it Bryce Young? Who was it that was the quarterback for Alabama? And then the freshman came in. Was Bryce Young the freshman at the time who came in? Remember?
No, it was Tua and
it was Tua. Yes. Who was the other one?
It was Tua in for
who was the starter? Yeah. I don't remember who it was.
No, it wasn't Hurts, was it?
Yeah, it was Jalen Hurts.
Okay.
I wasn't sure how far back he went.
So it happens. It can happen. A young kid, young freshman can come in and he can play big. Because Georgia's defense is really good and Notre Dame's one-dimensional. So you would think that he'll get his chances as long as he doesn't turn the ball over. But you know how I think about the SEC. So, we'll see. I think it's just going to be one of those games. It's just going to come down to whoever makes the most important plays.
Given the fact that Notre Dame was a national power for people who are in their 50s and 60s and not to those who are in their 30s and 40s, and Georgia has been nothing but a national power for those in their 30s and 40s, I'm surprised that this line is as low as it is, and I wouldn't be surprised if it goes up a little bit. I'm going to be on Notre Dame. I think they can win the game. I like the way they played all year. They had that one hiccup after they beat A&M at A&M in the Labor Day weekend game, and they put away a lot of opponents. Now they didn't play a lot of really strong opponents, but then again, your opinion about the SEC makes you wonder, what the great games that the teams that Georgia faced. Although clearly better than that of Notre Dame. Although Notre Dame, and again, we know they weren't a strong team, but they defeated both Army and Navy when they were unbeaten.
Yeah,
I mean, you're still beating a team that is two teams that are playing with great confidence and believe they can win every time they take the field. And they were hammered. I think they lost by like 47 or 49 points in those two games. And they had some other nice wins. And I don't see why they can't beat Georgia. And I'm wondering why this line is as low as it is, because you have to again Notre Dame's not really been a factor.
Why? What do you think it should have been?
I would have said at least 3. Just based on reputation and familiarity, of the wagering public. They all know about Georgia. They know that Georgia beat Texas twice this year. And, as I mentioned, Notre Dame hasn't been relevant. Well, they had a good season about a decade ago. But as far as their real relevance goes, you're talking about people who, grew up watching college football in the 70s and the 80s and maybe the early 90s. Well, so I'm surprised the line is that low.
Did we have a hypothetical line before? Because I would be interested to find out if Beck was starting.
6.5, which is what I had it.
So if Beck was starting, it would have been 6.5 then?
Correct. And I mean, I just did this because, again, I do all my numbers, and I can't talk about games unless I do my numbers. So the number I have written down right here was originally 7. And then I said, oh, that's right. They ruled out Beck. I'll go 5.5.
That would have made sense.
1 is wild to me.
Yeah,
that
worries me. Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't be surprised if people are expecting the money to come in on Georgia, and they may very well be laying the 1.5, figuring they're going to get 3.5 maybe on the way back.
Yeah, and currently, I mean, it's barely budged, and the current splits that I'm looking at is fairly even. So we'll see if approaching kickoff, we'll see a little Georgia money, and it ticks closer to 3 because it has moved from 1 to 1.5. Some 2s out there. Look, I think Gunnar Stockton. First of all, they had all the success with Stetson Bennett, who I believe was a walk-on.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Gunnar Stockton was a top 15 recruit. He's not your, conventional backup quarterback where you're saying, oh, this guy, clearly there's a huge drop off. First of all, Carson Beck had a lackluster year for what we expected from him. So
he could actually make Georgia more of a national championship
by the
team
way,
than I think they were going to be with Beck.
Keep in mind that Beck last year had a much better supporting cast than he had this year, and backup is going to have that same downgraded supporting cast.
You've got 2 of the top receiving rookie threats in the NFL, Bowers and McConkey as his guys. That was and so now you have what, it's been a month, and they've known that Beck isn't going to go. Yeah. You get this guy Stockton playing first team reps with a receiving core where a lot of these guys he's probably been with all season long as the backups. So I think there's going to be some depth at receiver for, with what they can do in the game plan. You also have Trevor Etienne. He was, touch and go for the final month of the regular season, played in the SEC championship game, now should be a lot healthier. So you got 2 pretty good backs. I think Georgia rolls in this game. Notre Dame rolls.
I have a question, and I don't know the answer. Maybe either of you do. Have any SEC teams played in bowl games yet?
Yeah, Texas.
Oh, okay.
And
I want
Tennessee.
Okay, Tennessee. Because I want to see, any of the games that have been played, because I want to see leading up to the game how the other SEC teams perform. Because as you said, Greg, you think that that the SEC is somewhat overrated. Well, let's see what happens in some of these SEC matchups with some of the better teams in the conference going up, like Missouri against Iowa, or Arkansas against Texas Tech. Not that Arkansas is much.
I guess as long as everybody's healthy, sure.
On Friday, you'll get the first doses of that. But Vandy, Georgia Tech, Oklahoma, Navy, and Arkansas, Texas Tech.
And then you've got
that's good, yeah.
And you've also got Alabama, Michigan coming up. I think
and USC A&M as well.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah,
as long as everybody's playing, that's a good barometer. And even in these 2 games, Tennessee gets blown out, And again, Texas, let's keep in mind, it was a 7-point game in the fourth quarter.
Yep.
Against a team that barely got into the playoffs. Okay, so nobody was singing the praises of Clemson going into the playoffs in Texas.
What was the most points that Texas gave up this year? Was it the 30?
It might have been the game. Yeah, they hadn't given up. That might have been it.
Yeah, because they had a good run of under 17.
Yeah,
they have good defense, and yet without knowing no running game, knew it. Everybody knew it. They still gave up all those passing yards.
Klubnik was really impressive.
But the problem is for Notre Dame, they don't have the receivers that Klubnik has, so they can't throw the ball. They just can't.
Well, they have
Riley Leonard has to be flawless for this game. I think to be tight in the fourth quarter. Again, you mentioned the injuries. Notre Dame along the way has lost their defensive captain and now a huge loss again.
Yeah, it's
so
now with those losses on Notre Dame's defense, would you say that Georgia's defense at this stage is the better defense, and if so, a lot better or marginally better? Because we're not talking about Notre Dame at full strength.
Right, marginally better. But I would say that you also have to say that from an experience standpoint, you've got to ride Smart and his coaching staff over Freeman and his. I mean, there are so many advantages to see this number at 1 as the opener, technically 6.5, but one is to where it is.
Yeah.
Once this announcement was made, that was kind of a given, and now maybe creeping to 2. You ride Georgia on the money line. That'll be my play. I mean, if anybody's watching this is going to be my best bet for the CFP. That I'll be charging.
That line is suspiciously low.
And if Notre Dame is going to have any success, they're going to have to rely on Jeremiah Love to have a huge game. Everybody's talking about Genty as well as they should, but Love is going to be the Genty of 25. He is an awesome running back. He is going to be one of the best running backs that come out of Notre Dame in a long time. When he comes out in the 26th draft, he had that huge play last week to show everybody just a little glimpse of how good he is. And he has to play well. He has to get at least, I would say, 150. And they got, they got another good back too. It's not just him, but he has to have the big game.
This is it for Riley Leonard, right? He's done.
Yeah.
Yep. He's done. Yeah.
I wonder who the quarterback's going to be next year, because Notre Dame could be excellent next year because they just added Pauling from Wisconsin. Yeah, Wisconsin as one of their receivers for next year. They should have a significantly more depth. They've got the backs you're talking about. A lot of the defensive players are back. So if they get a quarterback, we'll be talking about Notre Dame again.
That's one of the things I'm talking about as far as injuries, especially on defense. All of these teams, they recruit 2, 3, 4 deep. Most of the guys who are going to take over for Notre Dame's injured players, especially the key ones, could probably start on 2/3 of the teams in the nation. Now, it's a negative issue. Certainly during the regular season when you've got 1 week to prepare and you don't have your best players in there. Well, with 3 weeks to prepare, now you have an opportunity to give at least those guys an ability to work with the guys who have been starters all year and be able to learn a little bit, to be able to recognize what the positioning needs to be. So Notre Dame's defense may not be as adversely affected in this game as it would have been as if they were playing, say, if they just played like a week or two ago.
Looks like it's going to be a battle next year. As of now, unless they get a transfer between Steve Angeli, he's a sophomore, and CJ Carr, a true freshman who was their top recruit this year. So those are the 2 kids that are going to be battling it out. So they're going to have a lot of youth, unless they go the transfer portal way, which is probably what they'll do. They'll get a guy for 1 year to give these kids. It's
been portal the last couple of years with them.
Yeah. So that's probably the way they'll go again.
But most of the portal quarterbacks are gone.
Well, we don't know where Mateer's going yet.
Yeah, we do.
He made his decision.
Where did he? Oh, Oklahoma.
Yeah.
So that's where he's going for sure. Wow. So wasn't he the one that was? He was considered like the top guy in the portal, I believe.
Yeah, Mateer kind of number 1. He's going to OU. Some other kids that Mendoza.
I feel sorry for Oklahoma fans. They were probably hoping this wouldn't happen. Now, they're never going to get rid of Venables.
Arnold went to Auburn, right?
Yes, Jackson Arnold, and they got some other guys. So
they got 2 guys. Yeah. So that's going to work.
Auburn should be back next year.
All right. So Oregon and Ohio State.
Did Auburn change coaches that I missed?
No.
No, but I don't hate on what's his on
Freeze?
Freeze. Yeah,
Uh,
I just think he's obnoxious, and I've kind of chuckled at first of all, Auburn fans think that they should win the national championship
Yeah,
Every year. Yeah.
regardless of who's on the roster. But Peyton Thorne has been
Oh, he's so
stupid
awful.
as a quarterback there last
Yeah.
year.
All right, and then the big one, and by the way, we'll have a video. I'm doing interviews. I already did one today with Kevin Noon from Buckeye Huddle, so that's on our lads. That'll be available. We'll have a edited version here on Proline TV probably tomorrow. Same thing with my interviews tomorrow. Notre Dame. Gonna speak to Kyle Kelly of the On3 Network and blueandgold.com, and also for Georgia, Jed May from Ugasports.com. So I'm going to find out from, I guess, the horse's mouth as much as I can about Gunnar Stockton. So those will edited versions will be available here on Proline TV. You can get the full versions at our lads. And I'm speaking with Rob Mosley, who covers the Ducks. He's the editor for the Oregon Ducks website, and we're trying to hook up.
He's been
in the
on
next
that
couple
beat
days.
forever.
Oh yeah. And he's really done a great job, and hopefully we'll get him in the next couple of days. So look out for those interviews. But again, Oregon, Ohio State, I was surprised in a way, especially because Kevin looked at the line in advance. He said, if Ohio State beats Indiana, if Ohio State beats Tennessee, right now it's Oregon 1.5. And Ohio State wins the game, and now it's 2.5 Ohio State. So even the future line changed 3 points, I guess, because of how Ohio State dominated Tennessee. But
and they nearly beat Oregon at Oregon early in the year, but for some
but I'm
issue.
saying it was 1.5 prior, and then it changed. I'm sorry, but every time we talked about this last year with Oregon and Washington. And now if I lose, I'm going to lose, and I won't be surprised because Ohio State, we know how talented they are. But I just can't go against the team that beat the other team, and now they're the dog again. And I understand, like you said, it's not on home floor; it's a neutral site.
What's the Ohio State favorite in that first meeting? 1.5 or
yes.
something?
Same thing. I think we might have been but I might have been
maybe
it
one
was
a little higher.
bit more than that. Yeah. So I get all that. Matter of fact, I think the winner of this game is probably going to win the national championship. Not even probably. I'm going to go out and just say that's it. The winner will win the national championship. I get all of that, but again, I have to take Oregon just on that belief right there. I'm just surprised. No matter how good Ohio State looked, and they looked awesome, I just think Oregon's getting majorly disrespected here by being the dog. What do you guys think?
I think Oregon has a better quarterback.
They do.
And their defense, I think, is often overshadowed by the play of the offense. I think the defense played fairly well this year in the Big Ten, not knowing what to expect. So I do like Oregon in this game.
My number that I made was exactly on minus 254. I think the total is 55 now. Look, I was dead wrong on Ohio State, Tennessee. I thought that was the best game I've ever seen Will Howard play. He was awesome, and then he had the best line I heard thus far during the bowl season. He said, "Let it be known that the South came up and the North remembered, and conquered, and it conquered, and it was hilarious the way he delivered that."
I was just going to say two things on that. Number one, I think Ohio State came out of that out of the locker room to start the game with a pissed off attitude that will show you that Michigan, we're over that. We're going to show we're the better team. We were the better team against Michigan, and they showed it. And maybe Tennessee wasn't prepared for that. And of course, the other thing is this game is being played on a neutral surface as opposed to Ohio Stadium.
I mean, Oregon's my national champion, so I'm not going to deviate here. I'll just exercise a lot more caution than I would have. Finally seeing what Ohio State can be. Because that was the best game Ohio State's played all season by a long shot. I mean, look, they just clicked on every single cylinder. Running game, passing game. Jeremiah Smith's the best receiver in the country. But Tess Johnson's He's right there too. So this has the potential to be such a classic. Obviously, the first one was very close. I went and looked it up, Greg. Closing number was anywhere from Ohio State -3 to 3.5 in that loss in Eugene.
Yeah.
I'm sticking with Oregon, but no, the line doesn't surprise me at all. It's what I expected to be. And then if you like the Ducks, obviously take the points. If you like Ohio State, ride the money line.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's going to be one of those games that is just going to come down to who makes the big plays at the end. Ohio State could not make the big plays in their first matchup. Matter of fact, that last drive, late in that drive, was just really embarrassing. The way the players handled it, the coaching staff handled it, it was not good. So they deserved to lose that game, and yet they were one play away from winning the game on a very iffy call. Could have went either way. I mean, if they didn't call the offensive pass interference on JJ, nobody would have said anything. So it just shows you. That's what I'm saying. I think whoever gets those little calls, makes those kind of big plays in this game, probably going to be the team who wins it.
Greg,
should be a great game.
Greg, what do you take out of the way that Tennessee played in Ohio State? Is that further validation for your SEC opinion, or does it say that almost any team could not have competed with Ohio State that day, or a little of both?
More that the SEC is overrated. Yeah. I mean, again,
because it has to be that line, that opening line of Ohio State, since you said what it was going to be before, had to be reaction simply to the way they blew out Tennessee.
Had to be, yeah. And I think that's the thing, is that you would think, look, a lot of people still. The funny thing though is, like you guys said about the Georgia line, is that we would say, well, maybe they're finally showing a little respect for the SEC, but that's not the case, because Texas is a 13.5-point favorite against Arizona State. So I guess we can't say that. So
that's a lack of respect for Arizona State.
Yeah, that too.
But again, quality of competition can sort of justify it being that high. But as Tony said, I was surprised that it was higher than 10.
Yep.
So there you go. Again, the bowl games are going to be on New Year's Eve, and then the 3 on New Year's Day. So check it out. Should be an awesome week. Once again, we'll be on the air on Thursday. Not sure if Mark's going to be with us or not, but Mark will be here sooner than later. So he'll either be next week or the week after. That's 2025. And like we said, we're going to start talking some college hoops here. But again, keep in mind, if we're not talking about it here on this show, we are going to be talking about it on the channel. So once we get into January, we're going to start getting more into college basketball. Maybe even do like 1 or 2 videos each week about what's going on in college basketball now that they're because once they come out of the Christmas break, it's like full-fledged conference games, right?
Play.
Yeah, we've had a couple of them already, but yes, full-fledged from now on.
All right. So
let me ask you, Greg. You've been following college basketball, right, since the start of the
season? A little bit, yeah. Like Tony.
How would you Tony as well, but you talked about the overrated SEC football. How about SEC basketball?
Oh yeah, I'm not overrating them. No, they deserve it. Yeah, it's amazing how quickly that conference has gone from what was it, about 5 years ago they sucked.
Yeah.
Now I mean, but first of all, let's get to the tournament. The tournament will tell us everything. Because Big 12 had been the best conference the last few years.
Yeah.
So, let's see if the SEC can.
Big 12 is now missing Oklahoma and Texas.
Yep, that's
and they're in the SEC. Ironically,
absolutely,
enough.
And that's why I don't think anything's going to change. I think the SEC would be dominant in the tournament.
Yeah.
But yeah, because the Big 12,
as long as they stay healthy, injuries are always, especially in basketball, injuries are always going to be a key factor.
Yeah, I am interested in again what we're hearing. Isn't BYU? Aren't they getting like a 5-star kid?
No, he's already there.
And that's because what? That's basically because of the fact that the coach there.
Oh, okay. You're talking about the next 5-star. They already have one 5-star kid, and then the other kid that they're getting is actually he's prepping there, and he's the number 1 prospect in the next class. But they already have the Turkish, he's going to be a point guard in the NBA, but he's about 6'5". Demir, I believe is his name. So he's there. The coach, everybody respects, but this particular recruiting haul that they've gotten is somewhat of a boon of Utah Prep, something like that. That's
Okay.
something along the lines of.
So it's just a coincidence that they were able to get these kids.
Yeah, I guess.
From their little pipeline over there. Okay, well, we'll see. All right. So anyway, that's going to wrap it up. As always, don't forget to check out the links in the description. That'll give you links to everybody's individual. You got packages. You've got you got Andy's website. And of course, you can also check out some links to some of our videos here on the channel. And we'll see everybody in 2025. Happy New Year to you guys. I guess I won't see you till 2025. So enjoy your New Year's, fellas.
Happy New Year's to everybody. Health and happiness for the new year. And let's start off the new year with some winning bowl picks.
Sounds like a plan. Oh, go ahead. Give us your pick. Give us a pick.
Give
us a bowl pick.
A bowl pick. I'll go under in the game between Alabama and Michigan.
You got a bowl pick, Tony?
I'm sticking with Georgia. That's it.
Oh, they're playoff.
Oh, you guys
game?
got to me because if you're watching this, that'll be my best bet that day for sure.
Okay. I actually like Rutgers today, so
I like K-State, but I mean, no, you got a lot of guys out for Rutgers.
Well, they've been out for almost half of the season, so they've been able to play without them. All right, so that's going to wrap it up. We'll see everybody in 2025.